Chapter 1453. They were all the younger generation of Earth, and they were also the most dazzling generation in the world. However, they were unable to walk out of the calamity that had befallen Earth 17 years ago. At this moment, a faint sigh suddenly sounded. The calamity is not something you can control. Why take it to heart until now? Hearing this sudden voice, Yang Hao and Song Qie were shocked at first. Then, they seemed to have thought of something and suddenly looked 3,000 meters away. In the void, a green-clothed figure slowly walked over. The other party stood with his hands behind his back, and his clothes fluttered as he walked over at a steady pace. Following the appearance of this figure, the many figures hiding in the forest could not help but poke their heads out to size him up. Their eyes were filled with suspicion. Uncle Yi, Yang Hao's face immediately lit up. Master. Song Qie's body suddenly stiffened as he looked at the tall and straight figure. His slightly trembling eyes were filled with unconcealable excitement. Uncle Yi, you're finally here. Yang Hao took a step forward and walked over. He gave Yi-chun a bear hug. He was overjoyed. He still remembered that he had a heart attack when he was 4 years old. His mother died in a car accident. It was his father, Yang Tian, who went to the black market to fake a fight to raise money for a heart transplant. At that time, it was Yi-chun who had appeared and cured him. He woke his father up from a zombie and changed the life of the Yang family. It could be said that to Yang Hao, who was in his early 20s, Yi-chun was not only his father's brother, but also his elder. He was one of the few relatives he had in this world. Little brat, you seem to have grown taller again. Yi-chun patted his shoulder while smiling. He looked at the little guy who had grown to his ears. You've grown handsome, too. You're even more handsome than your father. At the same time, he sighed inwardly. Although he had seen this little guy at his wedding, he had left in a hurry and did not get along well. Now that he took a closer look, he could not help but be in a daze. The little guy who had followed Meng Meng for medicinal pills had grown up. No way. Faced with his praise, Yang Hao scratched his head and said in embarrassment, By the way, didn't Sister Meng Meng come? She's taking care of her brother at home. Theoretically, Yang Hao was a year younger than Meng Meng, but the former looked like Meng Meng's brother. How would they address each other when they met in the future? As soon as he finished speaking, he couldn't help but look at the figure in the distance. He took a deep breath and slowly walked over. Looking at the figure of the former who was slowly walking over, Lin Fan's eyes widened. Song Qie's deep eyes suddenly became moist. Then, under the stunned gazes of many people, Song Qie's eyes became moist. The North Sea Heavenly King, who was famous in China and commanded millions of soldiers, knelt hard to Yi-chun. Master! An unusually hoarse and excited voice immediately reverberated in the dumbstruck crowd. Screech! General Song actually knelt down to that person and even called a master. At this moment, the guards hidden in the forest responsible for protecting Song Qie were in an uproar and began to clamor. To them, Song Qie was their faith, but now, their faith was so respectful to a young man. How could they believe it? Yi-chun lowered his head and looked at the young man, kneeling before him quietly. The latter was when he was in Japan. He had killed his way into the Yamaguchi-gumi prison and caused the death of a retired Chinese veteran with the surname Song. Feeling guilty, he accepted the veteran's grandson as his disciple and named him Qie, Song Qie. After that, he did not pay much attention to this disciple after passing down the Tao method. Furthermore, he had gone to the ancient desolate realm to look for Su Yuhan for 17 years. In 17 years, his disciple had changed a lot. He had grown from a child to an adult that he could barely recognize. Yi-chun took a deep breath in under the dead gazes around him. Then, he smiled and placed his hand on Song Qie's shoulder. He patted him hard twice. Good child, get up. However, Song Qie remained unmoved. He lowered his head and choked. Master, I'm useless. All these years, I know. Yi-chun lifted his hand and helped him up gently. He then looked at his red eyes and said, You did the right thing. Why would I blame you? In reality, he had always felt guilty towards this disciple. After all, he had not fulfilled his responsibility as a master. Instead, this disciple had relied on his talent and opportunity to cultivate, to stage nascent soul. What was even rarer was that the former had acknowledged him as his master. Hearing that, Song Chia nodded heavily. He wiped his eyes and said with a smile, "Master, it's windy outside. Let's talk in the tent. Yang Hao, slaughter that pig we raised and make a feast for Master. We won't return until we're drunk." The quiet mountain was brimming with a rare joy. The spacious tent was filled with the intoxicating smell of alcohol. Pots of steaming hot food could not help but stir one's appetite. On both sides of the bonfire, Yichen took a sip of wine and glanced at the scar on Song Chia's forehead. He said in a deep voice, "Tell me, who set up the 12 shackles in your bodies?" His expression was slightly cold. Even though he had received this news from Yang Hao, he only truly felt the terrible condition of Song Chia's body after reuniting with him. 12 bone needles. A total of 12 bone needles had sealed 6 main acupoints in Song Chia's body, and the remaining 6 had sealed his primordial spirit. Every single bone needle was not weaker than an ordinary spirit treasure. The purpose of such a sinister method was to seal Song Chia's advancement to soul formation stage and bind him to the northern region, preventing him from leaving. Once he took a step out of the northern region, his body would instantly collapse and his primordial spirit would dissipate. Song Chia's hand that was holding the bowl paused slightly. Then he closed his eyes and said with a bitter smile, "Master, to be honest, I don't know either." Yichen could not help but frown when he heard that. Without waiting for him to speak, Song Chia continued, "This situation happened one day 12 years ago. A contemporary disciple was serving in the army when he received news that Earth had reached a compromise with the foreign immortal sections. I was not convinced at that time." He could not help but cry. In order to fight against the foreign immortal sects, many powerhouses of Earth and China dared to fight and die without hesitation. This battle lasted for 5 years, and countless people were sacrificed. However, the result was a compromise. Chapter 1455. That afternoon, at the eastern border of China, in the spacious tent, Yichen looked at a middle-aged man with a face full of stubble and the smell of alcohol with a complicated expression. The middle-aged man looked tall and handsome, but he gave off an extremely dispirited vibe. His messy hair was completely white. The lusterless white was like the white hair of an old man who had reached the end of his life. It was hard to imagine that this was the #1 genius of the Kunlun ruins, Luo Tinya, whom Yichen once knew. It was also hard to imagine that the peerless god of war in the hearts of outsiders looked like this. "Are you disappointed?" As if sensing his gaze, Luo Tinya took a big gulp of wine and laughed self-deprecatingly. "Brother Yi, I'm no longer the Luo Tinya, you know. I can only be said to be a walking corpse that lives for hatred." Yichen listened to him quietly. He sighed softly after a while. "It's been 17 years, and you still haven't gotten over it." He had learned from Yi Wen and the other girls that Luo Shueiyao had died when the foreign enemies invaded Earth. That was also the reason why Luo Tinya was so dispirited. "Get over it." Luo Tinya seemed to have heard something funny and laughed sorrowfully. "My sister is dead. I'm the only one left in the Luo family. How do you expect me to get over it?" "I'm sorry." Yichen gulped a few times. He took a sip from a bottle of wine and allowed the spiciness to spread in his stomach. "If I hadn't left Earth back then, perhaps so many tragedies wouldn't have happened. It's not your fault." Luo Tinya glanced at him with his turbid eyes before shaking his head and smiling. "It's my fault. It's my fault for being useless. I can't even protect Yao Yao. I, Luo Tinya, am a piece of trash." His beard was unshaven and his eyes were lifeless. Yichen said, "Who killed Ms. Luo? I can avenge Ms. Luo on your behalf." His tone was extremely cold, and he could not help but recall the many scenes of him meeting Luo Shueiyao. This girl came from the Kunlun ruins, but she did not look down on him at all. She had even risked her life to save him many times. Now that his old friend was gone, only sorrow remained. "No need." Luo Tinya took a deep breath in, and a fierce look suddenly flashed in the depths of his hollow eyes. "Brother Yi, I want to take revenge for Yao Yao myself. I don't need anyone else to interfere." All you need to do is remove the shackles in my body. He could not help but look at Yi Chun as he spoke to this point. I'm sure you've guessed the shackles between me, Ning Ming Tian, and your disciple, right? I have some guesses. Yi Chun took a good look at him and said while moving his lips, however, we still don't know who did it. As soon as he finished speaking, Luo Tianya subconsciously blurted out with a cold smile, Brother Yi, China is no longer the China of the past. Do you know something? Yi Chen's eyes narrowed slightly. With his experience, how could he not tell that Luo Tianya was hiding something? Luo Tianya chuckled and said, I can't say. I clearly know who it is, but I can't say it. Yi Chen frowned and said, You don't believe in my ability? Tianya has long heard of your ability. Luo Tianya still shook his head. However, the more that's the case, the more I can't let you know. Otherwise, it will be a fatal blow to China. In short, don't ask anymore. For you and for China, I won't tell you. I also advise you not to continue investigating. Just pretend that nothing happened back then. He did not give Yi Chen a chance to continue asking. He changed the topic and said, Brother Yi, do you still remember Su Qilin? Of course I do. Yi Chen nodded lightly and said, Why are you asking about this person all of a sudden? Su Qilin was the eldest son of the Su family, a wealthy family in Beijing 17 years ago. He was Su Yuhan, Su Yuwei, and the rest cousin. However, he had entered the Kunlun ruins since he was young and was killed by Yi Chen later. Luo Tianya glanced at him coldly. His lips moved slightly, and in the end he spat out a piece of shocking news. It's very likely that this person is still alive. What did you say? Yi Chen's expression changed slightly when he heard that. He then said, Impossible. I severed his body back then, and even his soul was destroyed by me. How could he not be dead? What if I tell you that he's a reincarnator? Luo Tianya stared at him. Reincarnator? Yi Chen's eyes flashed imperceptibly. If he's really a reincarnator, then it's really possible that he's still alive. The so-called reincarnator was a powerhouse who had reached the end of their lifespan or could not break through. They would be reincarnated, hoping to return to their peak, or even take a step further through rebirth. When a cultivator's cultivation base reached a certain level, they could split their soul, and each soul could transform into a reincarnation. If Su Qilin was the latter, then the one who died in his hands that day was only one of them. To be precise, this so-called Su Qilin was just one of the reincarnations of someone's soul. Yi Chen could not help but look at him as he thought to this point. How did you know? Luo Tianya said word by word. I met him 12 years ago. At that time, I didn't believe it either. Later on, he attacked me. I was no match for him, but he didn't kill me. He didn't kill you? Yi Chen's expression turned grim. That's right. Luo Tianya was also confused. He's very powerful. He seemed to be at stage god transformation at that time. I haven't seen him since then. Stage god transformation? Even though Yi Chen was mentally prepared, he was still shocked. He reached stage god transformation 12 years ago. Looks like this Su Qilin is really a reincarnator of some almighty. Perhaps when you saw him, this person had already completely awakened. In any case, you have to be careful. Luo Tianya said with a solemn expression, You killed Su Qilin back then, and we've already formed a grudge. If we meet again in the future, we'll definitely fight to the death. If I can kill him once, I can kill him again. Yi Chen scoffed and shook his head before saying, All right, let's start removing the shackles in your body now. He did not care if Su Qilin was still alive or if he was a reincarnator of some almighty. If he became his enemy again, he could only kill everything. Almost at that moment, in a luxurious hotel in central China, a formation was like a flood, isolating everything. As the formation fluctuated, a young man walked in quickly and walked to the side hall. There was a morning hall there, but there was no memorial tablet in the morning hall. Instead, there was a wooden statue. The wooden statue wore a Taoist robe and sat cross-legged with a horsetail whisk in its hand. It was dignified without being angry, like a glaring Vajra, and there was a faint sage-like aura. The young man took a few steps forward and lit up 3 incense sticks. Then he bowed to the wooden statue and said in a hoarse voice, ancestor, Mad Southern Yi has gone to the north and removed the bone needles in Song Chie's body. Now he has rushed to the east. End of this chapter. Chapter 1456. As the young man finished speaking, the 3 incense sticks in his hand suddenly burned quickly and became shorter at a speed visible to the naked eye. The smoke turned into dragon-shaped energy and shot into the eyes of the wooden statue. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared completely. Crack! At that moment, the wooden statue shook violently. Then, its eyes, which were originally dead, suddenly opened. They were like 2 small golden suns, unstoppable and looking down on everything. At the same time, an old voice slowly came from the wooden statue's mouth. Can't hide in the end. The voice was extremely long, as if it had crossed time and space and the long river. It made people feel respect from the bottom of their hearts. Plop! The young man knelt heavily on the ground with an extremely solemn expression. Patriarch, with Mad Southern Ye's ability, he'll find out that we were the ones who did it back then. If we don't take action now, I'm afraid. The Xinyuan 8 clans have protected China for countless years. The wooden statue's mouth opened and closed, and its voice was dignified. Everything we've done is for China. Unfortunately, the people are ignorant. Forget it. At the next moment, a golden light landed on the table in front of the young man. It was a pair of golden bells. They were only the size of a palm, but they were extremely ancient. This is the heart-frightening bell. Before the young man could react, the old voice immediately sounded in his mind. With this treasure and the chant, you can control that person. With her help, even if Mad Southern Yi is at the void refinement stage, he will definitely die. Thank you, Patriarch. The young man was overjoyed. According to what he knew, the female corpse was extremely strange and difficult to deal with. Even the Patriarch had paid a huge price to subdue it. With her help, she could indeed sweep through everything. At the same time, the old voice paused again. Mad Southern Yi is a Chinese genius after all. We can't be ruthless. Ask him if he's willing to submit to the Gu family first. If he's unwilling, then let's get rid of him. In the direction of the western region of China, several figures were running in the air. They did not hide their terrifying pressure at all, causing many demons in the forest below to tremble and flee. Uncle Yi will reach the western region in another 500 kilometers. Yang Hao stood on the wide flying sword as his clothes fluttered in the wind. At the same time, he introduced to Yi Chun, who was leading the way. Yi Chun broke through the clouds and charged forward. He said without even turning his head, "Who exactly is this Ning Mengtian?" On the day of his wedding, the Lord of the Western region had sent someone to congratulate him. He only knew that the Lord of the Western region seemed to be the husband of the Kunlun Ruins Purple Cap Mountain's eldest young miss, Zijir. As for anything else, he didn't know. Luo Tianya, who had broken all the shackles in his body, smiled and said, "This person is quite a figure." He rose up from humble background and had an ordinary family background. Later on, he stepped into cultivation because of the cultivation method that Brother Yi promoted. From then on, he displayed terrifying talent. With the guidance of Senior Ziqin Song, he stepped into the late stage of the Golden Core realm in just a few years. Luo Tianya, who had broken the shackles, was no longer as dispirited as before. Instead, he was replaced by a handsome middle-aged man who was in high spirits. Not bad. Song Chia nodded and said, Ning Yutian met Misty when he was cultivating in the Kunlun ruins. Later on, the two of them got together. After 17 years, Ning Yutian stepped into the mastery nascent soul stage. He stepped into the nascent soul stage from a mortal in 17 years. A hint of surprise flashed across Yi Chen's face. If that's the case, this person is indeed quite a figure. I'm afraid he's obtained a great fortuitous encounter. I want to meet him more and more. An hour later, a ray of sword light landed on the land of the western region. In that instant, several figures with tyrannical auras rushed over from all directions. Who dares to trespass into my western territory? In an instant, 4 early-stage nascent soul cultivators flew out with extremely gloomy expressions. Stop! At that moment, a magnetic voice resounded from afar, and then two figures approached from afar. It was a man and a woman. The man wore a black coat and had ordinary facial features. He was an inconspicuous existence in a crowd. However, there was incomparable determination and maturity between his brows, which added a lot of charm to him. Beside him was a woman in a long dress. She looked to be around 30 years old, and both her figure and temperament were excellent. When they saw the person who had arrived, the four early-stage nascent soul cultivators immediately cupped their fists and bowed to the former. "Young mistress, young master, step down." The man in the coat spoke slowly. Subsequently, he fixed his gaze on Yi-chun. His body froze at first. Subsequently, he walked forward quickly and bowed to Yi-chun. "Junior Ning Mengtian greets Mr. Yi." Yi-chun sized him up quietly. "You're the master of the Western Territory, Ning Mengtian?" "That's right." Ning Mengtian nodded suddenly and looked at him with incomparable respect. When Misty dominated the earth back then, Mengtian was just an ordinary person who was struggling to eat and wear. It was Mr. Yi who helped me with the cultivation method. "Uncle Yi, I told you a long time ago, right?" Yang Hao could not help but say to Yi-chun while winking, "Actually, old Ning could be considered half your disciple." At that moment, the woman next to Ning Mengtian suddenly smiled at Yi-chun. "Mr. Yi, do you still remember me?" "Ms. Z, how have you been?" Yi-chun looked at her and said with a smile, "It's been 17 years. Time hasn't left many traces on your face. Compared to 17 years ago, Mr. Yi is even younger and more domineering." Zi Zhui'er covered her mouth and smiled. She glanced at Ning Mengtian and introduced, "Mr. Yi, this is Zhui'er's husband, Ning Mengtian." At this point, a cunning look flashed across her beautiful eyes. Just as Yang Hao said, Mengtian can barely be considered half your disciple. Yichen did not know whether to laugh or cry when he heard that. Just when he was about to speak, his eyes suddenly turned grim. Then, he looked into the depths of the void. His sudden seriousness immediately caused the others to be incomparably astonished. Immediately, they subconsciously looked over. "Uncle Yi, what's wrong?" Yang Hao's expression turned grim. Yichen acted like he did not hear him. He continued looking into the depths of the void as divine fire flickered in his eyes. "Since you're here, come out." "Why are you hiding? Do you really need me to drag you out?" Just as he finished speaking, a surprised voice sounded from the void. "Huh." As expected of mad Southern Yi. Buzz, as the void trembled, a long-haired young man in black clothes slowly descended. The young man's facial features were ordinary, and the only thing that stood out was the crescent-shaped rune between his brows. However, the young man's cultivation base was not high. He seemed to be at early-stage god transformation. As this person appeared, Ning Mengtian took a step forward. He stared at him and questioned, "Who are you?" "This is an important military area. Outsiders are not allowed to enter without permission." End of this chapter. Chapter 1457. Who are you? After Ning Yuqian, Yang Hao sized up the black-clothed young man who had suddenly arrived with a vigilant expression. His gaze was cold. His intuition told him that this person had ill intentions. Facing everyone's questioning gazes and the faint, intimidating pressure, the black-clothed young man placed his hands behind his back, appearing very calm. His gaze swept past Song Che, Luo Tianya, and the rest, and he suddenly said, "If I'm not wrong, the 12 bone needles in your bodies have been removed, right?" "It's you." Luo Tianya stared at him as if he had thought of something. "You were the one who did something to our bodies back then?" The expressions of Song Chiye and the rest changed when they heard that. Yang Hao's eyes were bloodshot, and he subconsciously wanted to attack, but Song Chiye held him tightly. They had been sealed for a full 12 years. No one could understand how they had survived. Now, their enemy was right before them. Yichen squinted at the black-clothed young man. His gaze was focused on the crescent mark between his brows as he thought to himself, "You're quite rational." The black-clothed young man was clearly surprised by the reaction of Song Chiye and the rest. Then, he openly admitted it. "That's right, it was my Gu family who sealed you back then." "Why?" Song Chiye took a deep breath in and said word by word. "It's very simple." The black-clothed young man chuckled and said, "Because you The elites of the military represent the military world. Your protest will affect our grand plan, but there are people who don't want you to die, so we have no choice but to come up with this plan. At this point, he could not help but grin. Actually, according to my original intention, I wanted to kill all of you, but someone objected. Bastard! Yang Hao roared angrily, his gaze as if he wanted to devour someone. Don't be rash. Song Chie glared at him before turning to look at the black-clothed young man. He said coldly, "Why are you so kind as to inform us? Do you really think you can leave this place alive?" Boom! In the next moment, a pressure that also belonged to early-stage soul formation erupted from his body. The pressure caused many people's expressions to change. Shock flashed through Luo Tianya's eyes. "Little Qi, you've broken through?" Even Ning Yutian and Zi Zhuier looked at Song Chie in disbelief. To them, Song Chie was a junior, but he had taken that step before them. Thanks to Master's grace, I was lucky enough to break through. Facing everyone's gaze, Song Chie's gaze remained on the black-robed young man. You and I are both early-stage soul formation cultivators. Do you really think you can escape from me today? As he spoke, a sharp sword light flickered in and out of his body, as if it was a peerless divine sword that could be drawn at any time. Seventh brother, we can't let him escape. We must capture him and make him explain everything that happened all those years ago, Yang Hao said coldly. I admit that you are talented. However, the man in black wasn't afraid. Instead, he smiled. But you are no opponent of mine. As he said that, he suddenly lifted his head and looked at Yi Chun. Mad Southern Yi, you're my target. As soon as he said that, Yang Hao sneered. You silly thing. Do you think you're worthy of fighting Uncle Yi? It's more like getting your elders to show themselves. He was not the only one. Even Song Chia, Luo Tianya, and the rest were slightly stunned. The fact that Yi Chun could fight the heavenly venerable of absolute beginning's divine consciousness projection meant that his ability was not inferior to a void refinement cultivator. However, a mere early-stage soul formation cultivator like Gu Xian actually dared to boast so shamelessly? Was he being overly careful, or was he lacking in intelligence? Yi Chun looked at Gu Xian quietly and said calmly, You're just a mere early-stage soul formation cultivator, yet you dare to do this to me. It can only mean that you have a backup plan. Since that's the case, let's make it clear. I'd like to see where your credibility comes from. Mad Southern Yi is indeed Mad Southern Yi. Gu Xian looked at him in admiration. Suddenly, a palm-sized golden bell appeared in his hand. The bell was covered in runes and strange energy. The heavens cry, the earth cry, the earth cry, the corpses in this world have spirits, rise to the heavens and the earth, and enter the netherworld. His fingers danced as he formed a seal with his hand. Streams of invisible magic power surged out. In an instant, the golden bell in his hand suddenly blossomed with a resplendent golden light. The runes imprinted on it seemed to have come to life as they squirmed nonstop, emitting a faint aura that made one's heart palpitate. Boom! At that moment, the sky darkened and dark clouds rolled back, brewing a terrifying storm. In the center of the storm, a red figure stepped on the sky. What's that? Luo Tianya and the rest were stunned. In just a few breaths of time, everyone finally saw the red figure clearly. It was a woman wearing a phoenix crown and a red cape. Her facial features were extremely beautiful, and her skin was like jade. However, there was a hint of redness mixed with it, just like a lychee. The woman's pupils were dark, like a bottomless universe. She was peerless, like a female demon king who had descended from the heavens, and she charged over with a terrifying, killing intent. Who is she? At that moment, apart from Yi Chun, everyone felt an unparalleled pressure, an surging murderous aura charging at them. Plop! Luo Tianya and the rest could not resist the pressure. Their bodies lay heavily on the ground, struggling with all their might, causing all the bones in their bodies to crack. After seeing the woman's face, Yi Chen's originally calm expression finally changed slightly. It's her? 17 years ago, before he left Earth, the spiritual energy on Earth had recovered, and the mountains and rivers had changed. A female corpse from the Moon Palace had descended on Earth, and Yi Chun had obtained it. When he left Earth, he did not take the female corpse with him. He merely wanted to give you one and the rest someone to protect. Unexpectedly, the female corpse had disappeared after he returned. He had been unable to find the time to investigate the female corpse's whereabouts since he returned. He did not expect it to appear here now. What shocked Yi Chun the most was that the female corpse's aura seemed to have skyrocketed. The pressure she gave him was no weaker than the heavenly venerate of Tai Chu. As the woman appeared, a terrifying murderous aura swept out with her as the center. In an instant, all the plants within a radius of 5 kilometers were corroded into extreme black. This was something that only a corpse demon could do. Is this a human or a demon? Ning Mingtian and the rest were extremely shocked when they saw this. Just the murderous aura that she emitted had destroyed all living beings within a 5-kilometer radius. How could their expressions not change? Gu Xian glanced at the reactions of Ning Mingtian and the rest. He seemed to be enjoying it. Subsequently, he looked at Yi Chun while grinning coldly. Mad Southern Yi, this is what I've prepared for you. Are you satisfied? P.S. The first chapter, the power has been out for a day. It's either thunder or rain. There's still no electricity until now. This chapter was written with the remaining electricity on my phone. If it's not updated at 10 p.m., it means that the electricity hasn't come yet. Everyone, don't wait. Chapter 1458. In the silent world, Luo Tianya and the rest held their breaths as they looked at the woman in red who had suddenly descended. Buzz, 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 murderous aura swept through the sky, causing the void to tremble. The surroundings were filled with a terrifying aura. It was as if they were facing a demon king from the depths of hell, causing everyone to feel fear. Yi Chun squinted at the red-clothed female corpse and said to Gu Xian, I'm extremely surprised that you can control such an existence. He was certain that the red-clothed female corpse before him was the Moon Palace female corpse that had fallen from the moon back then. However, for some reason, she was controlled by Gu Xian, and her strength had increased greatly. Gu Xian seemed to be dissatisfied with his reaction and snorted coldly. You, Mad Southerny, were able to flatten the Taichu dojo by yourself and fight against the heavenly venerable of Taichu's divine consciousness projection. Your battle prowess is naturally terrifying. Any cultivator on the side of the road will know about your achievements. His gaze was extremely sinister. Since I dare to come a deal with you, I'll say that I'm prepared tomorrow. Unfortunately, you're too stupid and gave me the chance to summon this female corpse. Is that so? Yi Chun's eyes flickered. Gu Xian looked at him mockingly. Mad Southern Yi, I believe you know the power of this female corpse better than me. I'll give you a chance now. As long as you kneel down immediately and swear loyalty to my Gu family, you might be spared from death today. You want Uncle Yi to kneel to you? You're delusional. Yang Hao could not help but fly into a rage when he heard that. Gu Xian's gaze turned cold as he snorted. If you're unwilling, all of you will die today. Song Chie's expression changed slightly. Master, leave. Don't worry about us. Although he did not know where this female corpse came from, she was the most terrifying existence he had ever seen. He did not want Yi Chun to fight her. Leave? Since I dare to come today, there are only 2 outcomes. How can I give you guys the chance to escape? Gu Xian smirked coldly and looked at Yi Chun with a forced smile. Moreover, with your personality, I'm afraid you won't abandon your disciples and friends even if you can leave, right? Yang Hao, Song Chia, and the rest's expressions changed slightly. Sigh. Yi Chun suddenly sighed softly. He shook his head and looked at Gu Xian. I'm curious. What exactly is your Gu family? How dare you provoke me like this? You're not qualified to know. Gu Xian's expression was stern as he said, Don't even think about getting anything out of me. All you need to know is that my Gu family has existed for tens of thousands of years. My Gu family is not weaker than the Taichu Taoist, right? If that's the case, why are you so cautious? Yi Chun could not help but ask in return. He chuckled and said, If I'm not mistaken, there seems to be more than one person in your Gu family, right? And your Gu family is worried that they'll find out that you attacked me. Xian Yuan 8 clans. Meanwhile, Luo Tianya, who hadn't spoken until now, suddenly spoke. He looked at Gu Xian and said, "You're from 8 Xianyuan clans." As soon as he finished speaking, Gu Xian's expression finally changed. The latter seemed to fly into a rage out of humiliation as he said, "Very good. Since you don't know how to appreciate my kindness, then don't blame me." Ding ling ling. He abruptly waved the intimidating bell in his hand. The sound of the bell shook the sky, and the sound waves turned into shaped waves that surged toward the red-dressed female corpse like mysterious runes. Boom! At that moment, the aura in the red-dressed female corpse's body soared. Her hair fluttered, as if she was going to turn this place into the netherworld. Killing intent enveloped the world. At that moment, Luo Tianya and the rest felt their bodies crack. Their internal organs were about to be injured, their souls were about to shatter, and all the bones in their bodies were about to melt. What exactly is this thing? Ning Mingtian was terrified. The red-dressed female corpse took a step forward. Her ferocious might covered the sky and the earth, enveloping the sky. There was a faint aura that could destroy the world. Yi Chan waved his sleeve and protected Luo Tianya and the rest behind him. Then, he looked at the female corpse. Dazzling divine light bloomed from his body as well. This female corpse had indeed become stronger. Her pressure was not weaker than the heavenly venerable lord of absolute beginning. However, so what? He, Yi Chun, did not even care about the heavenly venerable lord of absolute beginning, let alone this inhumane dead thing before him. Rumble. One was like a demon, and the other was like a god. The mighty pressure collided violently. It was as if there were millions of armies clashing in the void. They pierced through metal and cracked rocks, shaking heaven and earth. Gu Xian's face was filled with killing intent. His gaze was cold as he pointed at Yi Chun and said to the red-dressed female corpse, "Kill mad Southern Yi." However, in the next moment, everyone was stunned to see that the red-dressed female corpse did not move at all. It was as if she did not hear Gu Xian. She looked at Yi Chun quietly with her empty eyes. There was no emotion on her face, as if she was trying her best to recall something. This sudden scene stunned Gu Xian. Then, he waved the heart-frightening bell in his hand and shouted, "What are you waiting for? Roar!" The strange bell sound caused the female corpse to be in extreme pain. Her long hair danced wildly as she roared at the sky. Monstrous, murderous aura spat out from her mouth and pierced through the space within a radius of 3,000 meters. Too terrifying. Yang Hao's face turned pale when he saw that. Surprise flashed through Yi Chen's eyes as he was about to attack. He slowly retracted the pressure on his body and fixed his gaze on the red-dressed female corpse. Only then did he recall that after he and the patriarch found the female corpse 17 years ago, his daughter, Meng Meng, had accidentally opened the ice coffin and swallowed the Yin pearl in the female corpse's mouth. That was why the female corpse was extremely close to Meng Meng. Because of that, after he attacked the female corpse, who was about to resist, chose to remain silent because of Meng Meng's restraint. Could it be that the former recognized me? Thinking to this point, the surprise in his eyes intensified. However, he did not let down his guard. "Bastard, do it! Do it now!" Gu Xian shook the heart-frightening bell in his hand crazily and roared. For some reason, he suddenly had a bad feeling. This female corpse was subdued by the Gu family's patriarch and controlled through the heart-frightening bell. In the past, she had been very obedient, but today she showed signs of resisting the bell. Roar! Roar! As Gu Xian shook the heart-frightening bell faster, the red-dressed female corpse was in even more pain. Her long hair suddenly grew, causing the entire world to be filled with python-like hair. Crack, crack! Suddenly a crisp sound rang out in the world. Gu Xian's body suddenly froze. Then, he lowered his head and stared blankly at the cracked, heart-frightening bell in his hand. Gotcha! Before he could think too much, the cracks on the heart-frightening bell grew larger and larger. In the end, it shattered with a loud bang and turned into dust. The heart-frightening bell has shattered. Oh no! At that moment, Gu Xian's face suddenly turned extremely pale. He immediately recalled that the patriarch had told him that once the heart-frightening bell shattered, It meant that the female corpse would lose control. Roar. At the next moment. Chapter 1459. Gu Xian suddenly raised his head and saw a pair of dark eyes that were like black holes that could suck one's soul. A bone-piercing chill surged in his heart. Why you? However, before he could finish speaking, a strand of python-like hair suddenly shot over and wrapped around his neck before hanging him in the air. Looks like she really recognized me. Only Yi Chen's eyes flickered. Gu Xian, who was hung in the air, was terrified. Let go of me. Let go of me. Evil creature, are you trying to rebel? He knew very well how terrifying this female corpse was. Not to mention him, even if the patriarch was present, it would be extremely difficult to capture her. Roar. The female corpse roared again. Her python-like long hair quickly contracted and directly turned Gu Xian's body into a bloody mist. Even his soul could not escape. The world suddenly fell into silence. This sudden scene caused Yang Hao's group to be completely at a loss. They did not expect that the great killing weapon that Gu Xian had brought would actually betray them at such a critical moment. Even so, no one dared to move. Their eyes were still fixed on the female corpse in red, fearing that her next move would be to attack them. At the same time, in a hotel in the middle of China, the wooden statue enshrined in the morning hall suddenly trembled violently. Soon after, an old voice sounded in the air. The heart-intimidating bell has shattered. Looks like Gu Xian's life is in danger. This piece of trash, I can't control her even with the heart-intimidating bell. Boom! The wooden statue suddenly exploded, and the hotel exploded as well, causing a huge fire. In the west of China, roar, roar. The female corpse in red roared repeatedly, shaking the surroundings. It was as if the damage caused by the heart-intimidating bell could not be resolved in a short period of time. Fine, this will lend you a hand. A faint voice suddenly sounded in the world. Subsequently, Yi Chun moved and appeared beside the female corpse in the blink of an eye. Master, you can't. Uncle Yi, come back. Brother Yi. When they saw this scene, everyone including Yang Hao, Song Chia, and Luo Tinya were shocked, and then they couldn't help but exclaim in unison. They had witnessed the female corpse's technique. She might not be weaker than the void refinement stage at all. The consequences would be unimaginable if Yi Chen approached her when she was in a frenzy. However, what shocked them was that the female corpse merely glanced coldly at Yi Chen as he approached her. She did not attack him at all. Yi Chen nodded lightly and tapped the former's glabella lightly. In front of everyone's eyes, countless strange black lights shot out from between the female corpse's eyebrows. Those black lights were like strange runes that flickered and then dissipated between the heavens and earth. That was a rune that someone had forcefully planted in her body with the purpose of controlling her. Gradually, the long hair of the red-clothed female corpse returned to normal, and the ferocious look on her face returned to its normal state. Yi Chen looked at her quietly. His lips moved slightly as he said, "Can you understand me?" However, to his disappointment, the female corpse was still as numb as before. However, her gaze was no longer as cold as before. Seeing that Yi Chen was fine, Luo, Tinya, and the rest heaved a sigh of relief as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. They could not help but walk up to him. Song Chia said, "Master, who is she?" Yi Chen said, while smiling, "She's the female corpse that descended from the Moon Palace back then. She went missing later on. I didn't expect her to fall into Gu Xian's hands." Hearing that, Luo Tianya's expression changed. He could not help but look at the female corpse in red again. He said in shock, "She's the female corpse from the Moon Palace?" Even Ning Yutian and Zi Zhui'er were no exception. Only Yang Hao and Song Chia were confused. The female corpse from a Moon Palace had descended to Earth 17 years ago. At that time, the two of them were still children, so they did not know about this secret. That's right. Yi Chen nodded lightly and said, "It's all Gu Xian's fault for being unlucky. If the Gu family had sent other powerhouses to deal with me, the process might have been complicated. However, they sent this female corpse. Fate is playing tricks on me. Brother Yi, this female corpse was at most at the initial stage God transformation realm back then. Why has she become so terrifying now? Luo Tianya frowned slightly. He was sure that the female corpse's current strength was probably not lower than the void refinement stage. Such an existence was comparable to the Taichu, heavenly venerable, and other foreign giants. Yichen could not help but shake his head. I'm not sure either. That was what puzzled him. However, when he thought about the mysterious origin of the female corpse before him, he felt relieved. Uncle Yi, I don't understand. Yang Hao circled around the female corpse and asked, why didn't she attack you and kill Gu Xian instead? Everyone looked at Yi Chun by instinct as soon as he said that. I'm not sure either. Yi Chun shook his head calmly. He did not want to reveal the relationship between the female corpse and his daughter too early. Perhaps it would be of great use at the critical moment. Is she dead or alive? Yang Hao looked at the female corpse's beautiful face and could not help but reach out to touch her skin. She's so white and soft, just like a living person. Boom. Before he could finish speaking, the female corpse, who was originally motionless, raised her hand and lifted him into the air. Her empty pupils gradually dilated. Clearly, she had the intention to kill. Uncle Yi, save me. Yang Hao's face turned green. Stop! Yi Chun shouted immediately and saved Yang Hao immediately. He then lectured, she doesn't recognize you guys, so you better not touch her. I won't touch her even if you kill me. Yang Hao hid far away. After experiencing what had just happened, he realized how bold his previous actions were. She was an existence comparable to the void refinement stage. Meanwhile, Song Chia and the rest shook their heads. They looked at Yang Hao as if they were looking at an idiot. Was he not courting death by touching a tiger's butt? Unfortunately, this woman attacked too quickly and killed Gu Xian directly. Yi Chun suddenly sneered. Otherwise, I wouldn't mind using the soul-searching tactic on him. Let's see where the so-called Gu family behind him got the confidence to provoke me. Brother Yi, let's end this here. Luo Tianya could not help but look at him and say with a bitter smile, trust me, don't try to pry into the Gu family's existence. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable. Yichen frowned and said, Brother Luo, do you think there's still room for reconciliation between me and the Gu family? Uncle Luo, do you know something? Yang Hao looked at Luo Tianya and said, why are you still hiding something at a time like this? Brother Luo, forgive me for being blunt. Ning Yuqian said slowly, even if we don't pursue the matter, the Gu family will definitely not let this matter rest. Instead of being beaten, why don't we attack? End of chapter. Chapter 1460. He listened to everyone's words of advice. After pondering for a moment, Luo Tianya could not help but say, actually, I know very little about the existence of the Gu family. He took a deep breath in and said, it's said that there are 8 extremely ancient and mysterious families in China that have been passed down to this day. They're known as the Xinyuan 8 families, and they carry the luck of China. As soon as these words came out, everyone's expression froze. And the Gu clan is one of the 8 Xinyuan clans? Yichen asked. Not bad. Luo Tina nodded slightly and said, there are very few people in the world who know about the Xinyuan 8 clans. It's said that they won't appear easily, and they've been waiting for an opportunity to appear for 10,000 years. Uncle Luo, what time? Yang Hao quickly asked. The others all looked at Luo Tianya. I'm not sure about that. Luo Tianya could not help but shake his head and say, it's said that an ancient emperor once appeared on Earth. This person once shocked the ages and could be said to be the number 1 person in all of history. He once crossed the void by himself and slaughtered all his enemies, standing above the 9 heavens. Ancient emperor? Hearing those words, the crowd's pupils involuntarily shrunk. They looked to one another with shock in their eyes. Even Yichen's eyes flashed unnoticeably. Luo Tianya took in everyone's expressions and said, do you know why Earth is called the celestial burial planet by the people of the outer realm immortal sects? Could it be that immortals have really been buried on Earth? Ning Yutian felt his mouth go dry. Under everyone's gaze, Luo Tianya nodded heavily and said, it's said that a perfected immortal descended to Earth 10,000 years ago. However, such an existence was defeated on Earth. His body was severed, and his immortal soul was suppressed on earth forever. As his voice fell, everyone's expression stiffened, and shock surged onto their faces. The information that Luo Tianya had revealed was simply too shocking. After all, true immortals lived in illusory legends. Yi-chan said calmly, "Could it be that the true immortal from the lower realm was killed by the great ancient emperor?" "Brother, you guessed correctly." Luo Tianya took a deep breath in and said, "This great ancient emperor killed an immortal with his mortal body. Then, he imprisoned his immortal soul forever. Then, he left behind a sentence that asked the immortals in the heavens if they dared to come to the mortal world. Then he stepped into the ancient starry sky path alone." "Ha ha!" Yang Hao's teeth chattered as he listened, and he said with a perturbed expression, "Is this true, or just a legend? Are there really immortals in this world?" The others fell silent. They had already come into contact with cultivation. Their understanding of cultivation was to fight against the heavens and constantly live longer. No one knew how long they could live, but it could only be said that they were infinitely close to immortality. However, whether there really is immortality in the world, not only them, but also all the old monsters in the crossing calamity stage have asked this question more than once. True and false. Who can figure it out? Luo Tianya smiled bitterly. "I saw this secret from an ancient book that was almost rotten. Unfortunately, that ancient book had long decayed. What the few of them did not know was that under Yi Qin's calm appearance, there was a huge commotion. The great ancient emperor had once appeared on Earth. The great ancient emperor had killed an immortal from the lower realm and suppressed his immortal soul. In reality, an immortal's true body could not descend to the lower realm because the power of laws contained in an immortal's body was too powerful. Once an immortal entered a small world, it would cause the latter to collapse. Although immortals could not descend directly, they could use their bodies in the lower realm to summon a clone to descend to the lower realm. However, descending to the lower realm through this method could not be considered an immortal, let alone the existence of an immortal soul, unless an immortal shattered the immortal bridge in his body and dispersed the laws. At the same time, he suppressed his cultivation to the Mahayana stage. Only then could he descend to the lower realm with his true body. As for the great ancient emperor that Luo Tianya mentioned, not only did he sever the immortal's body, he even imprisoned his immortal soul forever. That could only mean that the immortal had suppressed his cultivation level and descended to earth with his true body. The shock inside of Yi-chan grew stronger as he thought to this point. Even if immortals suppressed their cultivation to the great ascension stage, they would still be at the pinnacle of cultivation and would be considered a powerhouse in the spirit realm. However, there were people on the earth who could kill an existence that was stronger than the Deshang stage. What did that mean? This meant that this so-called primeval emperor's combat strength was probably not lower than the great vehicle stage. The main point was that he came from Earth. After a while, Songqia looked at Luo Tianya and said slowly, "Uncle Luo, could it be that this ancient emperor is related to the 8 Xianyuan clans?" Meeting his gaze, Luo Tianya could not help but take a deep breath. He nodded heavily and said, "This great ancient emperor is called Great Emperor Xianyuan." As soon as he finished speaking, the world suddenly fell silent. The deathly stillness was terrifying. Emperor Xianyuan, also known as Yellow Emperor or Yellow Emperor Xianyuan, was originally surnamed Gongsun. Later on, he changed his surname to Ji. Therefore, he was called Ji Xianyuan and lived in Xianyuan Hill. The leader of the ancient Huaxia tribal alliance, he was the ruler of the Huaxia people in ancient times. The leader of the 5 emperors, he had once engaged in a divine battle with the Yin Emperor in Zhuolu. He was the ancestor of the billions of descendants of Yin and Huang. The ancestor of all surnames, the Yellow Emperor Ji Xianyuan, had infected his descendants, and his descendants took the name of the fief as their surname. However, Yi-chun was the most shocked. It was because he suddenly thought of Ing. Ing was the product of the first emperor's cultivation of the 3 pure ones. Ying's 3 pure ones was obtained from the tomb of Yellow Emperor Xianyuan in pursuit of the art of immortality. In the end, he obtained it from the tomb. Apart from that, he also obtained many inheritances, causing Ying to want to build the immortal Qin Empire. In the end, he was betrayed by the 9 families. Both of them mentioned Great Emperor Xianyuan. Yi Chun suppressed the shock inside of him and mumbled, Great Emperor Xianyuan killed an immortal's body on earth and imprisoned his immortal soul. He must have obtained many immortal cultivation techniques from the immortal soul. That's why the first emperor, who desired immortality, dug up the emperor's tomb and obtained the 3 Pure Ones technique and many benefits. If Great Emperor Xianyuan is really that powerful, doesn't that mean that the Yin Emperor who was defeated by him in the Battle of Zhuolu is also a ferocious person? There's also the 12 ancestral witches. They're formed from the blood essence of the god of creation, Pangu. There's also the 3 Pure Ones. They're existences that were split from Pangu's primordial spirit. No matter how calm Yi Chun was, he could not help but feel excited as he thought to this point. The closer he got to Earth, the more he realized how terrifying Earth was. There were too many ferocious people in such a small world. Any one of them was an existence that could shock the past and present. However, what puzzled him was that if these ferocious people were really as powerful as the legend said, why would they disappear from this world? Phew! Yi Chun secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He could not help but look at Luo Tianya. Don't tell me that the so-called 8 Xianyuan clans are the descendants of Great Emperor Xianyuan. End of this chapter. Chapter 1461. As soon as Yi Chun said that, everyone looked at Luo Tianya subconsciously. Luo Tianya's expression was extremely complicated when he met Yi Chun's gaze. Brother Yi, you're right. The 8 Xianyuan clans are indeed the descendants of Great Emperor Xianyuan. This is also why I advised you not to try to pry into the Gu family. What a joke. Hearing that, Song Chia could not help but smirk coldly. Great Emperor Xianyuan is the ancestor of China, yet his descendants are so shameless and despicable. Yi Chun, on the other hand, was more open-minded. After all, Great Emperor Xianyuan was Great Emperor Xianyuan, and his descendants were descendants. Although they were related by blood, there was no guarantee that their temperament and character were absolute. Ning Yuqian frowned and said, Doesn't that mean that after we killed Gu Xian, we've already offended the Gu family or even the entire 8 Xianyuan clans? Not necessarily. Luo Tinya shook his head and said, The Gu family is only one of the 8 Xianyuan clans. Not all of them are like the Gu family. There's no lack of reasonable ones among them. I agree with that. Yi Chun nodded lightly and said, Gu Xian said it earlier. When they wanted to kill you guys back then, they were stopped. I believe it was the other 8 Xianyuan clans who opposed it. Hearing that, everyone could not help but nod. Luo Tinya, on the other hand, frowned. Even if the other 8 Xianyuan clans are reasonable, it doesn't mean that they will offend the Gu family to help us. What's so great about the 8 Xianyuan clans? However, Yang Hao smiled disapprovingly. Logically speaking, the billions of people in China are all descendants of Great Emperor Xianyuan. Even though he knew that he was speaking out of anger, Song Chia still did not know whether to laugh or cry. How can that be compared? The reason why the 8 Xianyuan clans were called Xianyuan was because their bloodline was the purest. At that moment, Yi Chun suddenly looked at Luo Tinya. Brother Luo, do you know where the immortal soul of Great Emperor Xianyuan is? I'm not sure. Luo Tianya could not help but shake his head. Then, he glanced at him. Brother Yi, what I said are all rumors. There's no real evidence to prove it. Don't take it too seriously. The reason he said that was because he was worried that such a secret would affect Yi Chun's Tao heart and affect his future cultivation and growth. Yi Chun smiled without saying anything, but his eyes could not stop flickering. In the present age, the ones who were closest to this secret were the Xianyuan 8 clans, followed by the Ying clan. After all, the first emperor had once excavated the tomb of the Xianyuan Great Emperor. As for the 8 families of Xianyuan, they had lost all clues after Gu Xian was killed by the red-dressed dead woman. Therefore, the only breakthrough point was Ying. However, Yi Chun could not help but feel a headache when he thought of Ying. This guy. Ever since he joined hands with Ing to fight against the immortal palace in the Purple Sky realm, this fellow had disappeared. It seemed like this wasn't the first time this happened. Every time, Ing would come and go suddenly. However, Yi-Chen was certain that Ing must have returned to Earth, and it was very likely that he was in Inshu. Right? If the great Emperor Xinyuan really existed in the past, then it's very likely that his tomb is in the dark ruins. I'm afraid that the immortal soul that was imprisoned by him is in the dark ruins as well. Yi-Chen thought to himself, after all, it's impossible not to be discovered after so many years in the outside world. It seems that the trip to Inshu is a must. He mumbled to himself. His current priority was to go to Inshu and see if he could find something that could extend Su Yuhan's life. At the same time, he would find Yang Tian. The next step would be to explore the secrets of Inshu, especially when he was fighting the Heavenly Lord of Absolute beginning that day, the strange stone coffin that had crossed the void from Inshu to help him. With Gu Xian's death, the matter that involved the secret of the 8 families of Xinyuan came to an end. Subsequently, Yi-Chen brought Song Chia and the rest back to Tiananmen City. He then entered the secret room to cultivate in seclusion. In the quiet secret room, Yi-Chen sat cross-legged. Yi-Chen sat with his legs crossed. The silhouettes of Emperor Brush and Knight Demon Armor appeared in the air before him. The Knight Demon Armor transformed into an old man and said fawningly, "Master, quickly take out that tattered shirt." I and the old Demon Brush can't help but drool. Look at you. Isn't it just a broken grade 9 immortal artifact? Emperor Brush seemed to look at him in disdain. You're the only one who's promising. The Knight Demon Armor was unwilling to be outdone. He chuckled, Old Demon Brush, since you're so promising, all right, give me the immortal energy in that tattered shirt. I'll absorb it myself. Are you worthy of taking it for yourself? Emperor Brush chuckled. Enough. Yi-Chen could not help but interrupt them when he saw the two of them fighting. Subsequently, a golden battle robe appeared before him with a thought. The golden battle robe shone brightly. It was the spoils of war that Yi-Chen had taken from the patriarch of Liyun after killing him. A broken grade 9 immortal artifact. The artifact's spirit has long decayed, and there's not much immortal energy left. A dignified immortal artifact has fallen to such a state. Yi-Chen looked at the golden battle robe quietly. Then, he waved his hand and tossed it to the Knight Demon Armor and Emperor Brush. It's yours now. I hope it can heal some of your injuries. 3 days later, a dazzling golden glow and a terrifying pressure suddenly shone in the secret room where Yi-Chen was cultivating in seclusion. The old man in black that the Knight Demon Armor had transformed into smiled at Yi-Chen while stroking his beard. Thank you for fulfilling my wish, Master. Clearly, he had recovered quite a bit after devouring the immortal energy from the broken immortal artifact. Yi-Chen looked at him from head to toe and asked doubtfully, Old Demon, how much have you recovered? Master, I'm now equivalent to a low-grade innate spirit treasure. The Knight Demon Armor stroked his beard and laughed. In short, you can do whatever you want on Earth from now on. If you're distracted, I'll catch you. Not bad. Yi-Chen could not help but nod. In the cultivation world, magic artifacts were divided into magic artifacts, spirit artifacts, magic treasures, spirit treasures, supreme spirit treasures, innate spirit treasures, and immortal artifacts. Thinking to this point, he could not help but look at Emperor Brush. Emperor, what about you? The Emperor Brush looked at the smug Knight Demon Battle Armor in disdain and said, Your Majesty, I have also recovered to the level of an inferior grade connate spiritual treasure. A single word can kill any inferior grade connate spiritual treasure. After saying that, he glanced at the Knight Demon Armor again. The latter was instantly enraged. You sly old Brush, try killing me if you dare. Very good. A smirk appeared at the corner of Yi-Chen's lips. The recovery of the two of you has greatly increased my combat strength. Your Majesty, I have good news for you. Emperor Brush suddenly stopped smiling and said solemnly, I seem to have sensed the aura of the immortal, slaying, flying saber. End of this chapter. Chapter 1462. Yi-Chen's expression changed when he heard that. He looked at it suddenly. "What did you say?" "Your Majesty, the Emperor sensed the whereabouts of the immortal slaying saber." Emperor Brush repeated again and said seriously, "As you know, we immortal weapons that have followed you before are extremely familiar with each other's auras. After the Emperor devoured a portion of the immortal energy to recover, his perception has also increased." Yi Chun sat up in shock. Then, "Can you sense where the immortal slaying saber is?" This news was just too exciting. When he was in the immortal world, he had received the Heavenly Emperor Sword, Knight Demon Armor, Emperor Brush, Immortal Slaying Saber, and many other top-notch offensive and defensive immortal weapons. If the Heavenly Emperor Sword was the symbol of the throne, then the Immortal Slaying Saber represented absolute killing. Once the Immortal Slaying Saber was unleashed, immortals and gods would be killed. No one could escape the Immortal Slaying Saber. Emperor Brush slowly closed its eyes and turned into a golden brush. The tip of the brush surged, and then it said calmly, "It's in a very subtle space. The space barrier is very thick, and it has the strange effect of devouring divine consciousness." It disappeared. That guy's aura disappeared. It appeared again. "No, that guy is moving, and he's moving very fast." After a while, Emperor Brush turned into a human form. It looked at Yi Chun solemnly and said, "It disappeared again." Yi Chun frowned and said, "Are you sure it's not in the outer realm?" He was worried that the immortal slaying saber was in the outer realm. If that was the case, it would be very difficult for him to find it immediately. "No, I'm sure that it's on Earth." Emperor Brush shook its head and said with certainty, "To be precise, it seems to be in a secret realm on Earth, and its aura is intermittent." Yi Chun's heart skipped a beat. "Could it be in Insu?" "It's most likely inside," Emperor Brush said. Yi Chun said in a deep voice, "It seems like I have to head to Insu quickly." Knight Demon Armor at the side revealed a smile that was uglier than crying. "Damn it, good people really don't live long, while scourges live for 1,000 years. That dog, Celestial Slaying Dog, is actually still alive." Among all the immortal weapons in Yi Chun's possession, it was most afraid of the Immortal Slaying Flying Saber, because the latter was stained with too much blood. There is no lack of immortals and demons among them. It was not an exaggeration to describe it as a demonic weapon. Even the Immortal Slaying Platform, which could kill immortals like flies and strike fear into the hearts of all immortals, paled in comparison to the Immortal Slaying Flying Knife. At the Yi residence villa, the Patriarch of Hell and the rest welcomed Yi Chun as soon as he walked out of the secret room. After Yi Chun responded to everyone one by one, he then looked at Yuan. "Yuan, contact Taoist Beiyan. Tell him that I want to enter the Yin ruins and ask him to open the passage." Yuan nodded and left immediately. The old ancestor of Yellow Spring was moved. "Fellow Taoist Yi, are we finally going to enter the Yin ruins? Let me say this first. I don't want to continue guarding your house." During the few days that Yi Chun was not around, the Patriarch and Yi Wushuang had been guarding the Yi residence villa. It was fine for Yi Wushuang, but it made the Patriarch extremely anxious. It was because he had watched Yi Chun grow stronger day by day, while he was stuck at the threshold of beginner stage God transformation stage. "Don't worry, I'll let you come with me this time." Yi Chun nodded, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. He said, "All of you can follow me into the Yin ruins this time." "Shaochen, what about us and Yuhan?" Yihai could not help but ask. Yi Chun could not help but say after hearing that, "Dad, you guys stay at home. Take the Qi repair pill that I gave you guys and cultivate according to the cultivation method I gave you." "But what if someone takes advantage of your absence?" Yihai said worriedly. "Don't worry about that." Yi Chun smiled lightly and scanned with his divine consciousness. Then, he waved his sleeve and appeared outside the Yi residence villa with everyone. In a quiet courtyard, two little guys, one big and one small, were playing crazily in the courtyard. They were Yi Chun's daughter, Meng Meng, and his son, Yi Ming. Meng Meng jumped left and right in the courtyard. From time to time, she would turn around to look at the little guy who was staggering behind her. "Silly brother, chase me. If you catch me, I'll give you medicinal pills." Yi Chun's second son, Yi Ming, was already 2 months old. Even so, he had inherited most of Yi Chun's talent and learn to walk in 2 months. Behind the two of them was a woman in red. The woman had a cold aura and a blank expression. However, her empty eyes were fixed on Ming Ming. She followed the little girl wherever she went. The woman in red was the female corpse of the Moon Palace that Yi Chun had brought back. Even though it had been 17 years, she was still the same as before. It was as if she treated Ming Ming as her closest person. Yi Chun seemed to have thought of something and looked at the Patriarch of Hell with a forced smile. Patriarch, try attacking her. Are you plotting against me again? The Patriarch of Hell saw that something was wrong with his expression. He rolled his eyes and shook his head repeatedly. He was very shrewd. Yi Chun could only shrug. All right, you can stay at home then. Don't. The Patriarch of Hell immediately panicked. After gritting his teeth, his body flashed, and he turned into lightning that charged at the woman in red. Boom! Under everyone's gaze, a monstrous, murderous aura suddenly surged from the body of the female corpse who looked like an ordinary woman. Then, she suddenly turned around and slapped him. Ah! The Patriarch screamed as he was sent flying like a ragged sack. In the end, he crashed heavily into the depths of the lake. Apart from Luo Tianya and the others who had seen the female corpse's methods, the rest were so shocked that their eyeballs almost popped out. The Patriarch was sent flying by a single slap from her. A moment later, the Patriarch of Hell ran over. He looked at Yi Chun with a pair of extremely resentful eyes. Fellowy. Although he said that, the shock in his heart was like a stormy sea. He stared at the red-dressed corpse and said, She is... If it was an ordinary early-stage god transformation cultivator, they would have died long ago after taking a slap from the female corpse. Only the Patriarch was different from ordinary people and had many tricks up his sleeves. Even so, he still felt the vital energy and blood in his body surging as if he had gone berserk. That's right. Yi Chun nodded lightly and turned around to look at Yi Hai. Dad, you saw it too. With her around, no one can touch you guys at all. Yi Hai suppressed the shock in his heart and looked at the female corpse. He said, Does this lady have a name? Name? Yi Chun was stunned at first. After sizing up the female corpse for a few seconds, he eventually said, Just call her Hong Xiao. After saying that, he walked to his daughter's side and squatted down to touch her face. He said, My dear daughter, when I'm not around, stay at home with your sister Hong Xiao. If there's a bad guy, ask your sister Hong Xiao to beat him up. The little girl immediately giggled and waved her little fists. All right, if there's a bad guy who wants to bully Mommy, Grandpa, and Grandma, I'll ask Sister Hong Xiao to beat him up. End of this chapter. Chapter 1463. After deciding to head to Insu, Yi Chun did not leave immediately. Instead, he chose to stay at home for the night. The main reason was that he was worried about Su Yuhan. He wanted to leave some medicinal pills for her before he left. Secondly, he wanted to see if the Gu family of the Xianyuan 8 clans would choose to cause trouble. It was nighttime. The galaxy was resplendent, and the night sky was alluring. Creak! As the door to the secret room opened, Yi Chun walked out with a faint fragrance. He scanned the silent Yi family villa with his divine consciousness. He only walked into the room after seeing that his parents and daughter were asleep. The light was hazy, but there was a beautiful figure who could not sleep. She sat alone in front of the bed, dressing herself up meticulously. It was Su Yuhan. At that moment, she was wearing the wedding dress again. Her slender hand was holding a paintbrush as she focused on drawing her eyebrows. Her every movement was extremely meticulous, as if she cherished everything that she had now. Yi Chun walked in calmly and stopped in his tracks. He looked at Su Yuhan quietly, who had her back facing him. The former's white hair made him look extremely complicated. Su Yuhan's body was extremely weak. She spent most of her time lying on the bed, as if every movement would consume a lot of energy. It was because the life force in her body was flowing away. Even with Yi Chun's spiritual power nourishing and conditioning liquid day and night, he could not change it. At most, he could slow down the speed of her life force flowing away. How could the cycle of life and death be changed so easily? Even the Patriarch of Hell, who was a tribulation stage almighty in his previous life, could only choose to reincarnate when his life was about to end. Yichen looked at Su Yuhan's back, his heart filled with reluctance and heartache. After an unknown period of time, Su Yuhan, who was standing in front of the mirror, suddenly saw the reflection in the mirror. Then, she turned around and looked at him happily. "Idiot, why are you standing there? I just want to see you more." Yichen took a deep breath in and walked over with a smile after recovering his gloomy mood. "Hubby." Su Yuhan stood up lightly and twirled the corner of her dress with her fair hands. She then looked at Yichen in anticipation. "Do I look good?" Yichen could not help but hold her hand gently. "You look good. To me, you're the most beautiful woman in this world. No one can compare to you." Although he said that, his heart ached because her hand was too cold. It was so cold that there was no warmth at all. He couldn't help but pull the former into his arms and smell her hair. "Why do you have to wear a wedding dress and dress up so beautifully?" "Because I'm worried that you won't be able to see it again in the future." Su Yuhan snuggled in his embrace with a warm gaze. Yichen's heart jolted when he heard that. It was as if a sharp blade had pierced through his heart. "Honey, I've been dreaming about my parents for the past few days." Su Yuhan glanced at her all of a sudden. "I dreamt that my parents were standing far away. They were smiling and waving at me, as if they were calling me over." At this point, she deliberately shifted her gaze away and looked out the window. "I heard that when a person is about to die, they will often dream of those who have already passed away." Silence. There was a short period of silence in the room. Su Yuhan's eyes were filled with reluctance. She could not bear to part with Yichen. She could not bear to part with her daughter and son. She could not bear to leave this world. Meanwhile, Yichen's heart ached even more. He had never seen Su Yuhan's biological parents. However, he could tell from Su Yuhan's words that she had probably accepted the fact that she was about to die. He took a deep breath in and caressed her face with a trembling hand. He said slowly, "I've already said that you won't die. Even if it's not for me, you have to do it for the two children, right?" "Yes, yes." Su Yuhan forced a smile and nodded. She stared at him with her beautiful eyes. "Yichen, promise me. If I'm really gone, don't be too sad." "No." Yichen covered her red lips with his hand and said firmly, "You won't die. As long as I'm here, no one will dare to take your life. Even the heavens can't. Ever since I, Yichen, stepped onto the path of cultivation, I didn't do it to become an immortal. I only did it to find you in the vast mortal world." Hearing such emotional words, Su Yuhan could not help but hug him tightly and murmur, "The Buddhist scriptures say that this life is a mirror. How many incense offerings were there in our previous lives? We can only spend one life together as husband and wife. However, I'm satisfied even if it's just one life. What the Buddha said is bullsh**. Yichen could not help but sneer. "Your husband doesn't have any faith. If I have to have faith, it can only be the sword in my hand. If there's anything that stops you from being with me forever, I'll destroy it with my sword. If I become a demon and you become a Buddha, I'll put down the butcher's knife and become a Buddha to protect you. If I become a Buddha and you become a demon, I'll become a demon to protect you." Yes, Su Yuhan's beautiful eyes were like water, and they were filled with gratitude. She did not expect a casual sentence from her to cause such a huge reaction. "Wait for me." Yichen hugged her tightly and said, "I'm going to eat Su this time, mainly to look for something to extend my life. I'll definitely be back in 10 days or a month." "All right." Su Yuhan nodded obediently and said in anticipation, "Hubby, I want you to bring me to fly in the sky." "Sure." Yichen laughed and carried her with one hand. He stepped out of the room and soared into the sky. 5,000 meters, 8,000 meters, 10,000 meters. In the end, the entire Lin City was incomparably small in their eyes. Beneath their feet was a boundless sea of clouds, and above their heads was the dazzling galaxy of the universe. It was as if it was within their reach. The two of them lay on their backs in the sea of clouds. Su Yuhan snuggled against his chest like a kitten and looked at him gently with her head raised. "Hubby, why do you like me? With your current influence, there are too many women who are better than me. Then, I'll have to start from the first time I met you, in university." Yichen caressed her face softly with a distant gaze. Su Yuhan leaned against him and listened to him talk about their past quietly. She could not help but laugh whenever she heard the key points, as if she was 10 years younger. When the moon was full of stars, Su Yuhan lifted her pretty face and looked at Yi Chun with her beautiful eyes. She snorted softly, "Hubby!" Clearly, she had fallen in love. Yi Chun had never seen her act like a girl. He felt his entire body go limp. He could not help but lower his head and kiss her lips that were as smooth as lychee. The two of them used the sea of clouds as their bed and the endless galaxy as their cover. They were entangled and felt the purest love in each other's bodies. When the moon was full, Yi Chun could not help but look at Su Yuhan, who was sleeping soundly on his hand. His expression was extremely complicated. "Silly, who asked you to give me the pure, energy in your body?" If the Patriarch of Hell were here, he would realize that Yi Chun's aura was getting more and more terrifying. In terms of aura alone, he was even more terrifying than the Heavenly Venerate's divine consciousness projection. End of this chapter. Chapter 1464. Bayou City, China, General Mountain. Above the mountains that stretched for hundreds of kilometers, a private plane was flying at a low altitude. There were a few people sitting in the cabin. It was Yi Chun and the rest. As the plane flew past, Yi Chun looked at the scenery below along the way. As far as he could see, the mountains were surrounded by clouds. The trees were dense, and it was difficult to see the scenery in the mountains clearly. Sometimes, he could vaguely see a few huge lakes. The blue waves were boundless, and they were one with the surrounding mountains. Yi Chun suddenly retracted his gaze and looked at Taoist Beiyin next to him. "Fellow Beiyin, are you saying that one of the entrances to the Yin ruins is in General Mountain?" Taoist Beiyin nodded at first. Then he said in surprise, "How did fellow Yi know that this place is called General Mountain? Could it be that you've been here before?" "This is the second time I've been here." Yi Chun could not help but smile when he met his gaze. The first time he came to General Mountain was after he was invited by the Gu family to participate in the Tian'an martial competition. He came to look for materials to refine storage rings. It was also at General Mountain that he met Tang Ning, who was from the wealthy Tang family in Hong Kong. For that, Yi Chun killed the Tang family's ancestor who had turned into a zombie in the Tang family's ancestral grave. "I see." Taoist Beiyin came to a realization. At this moment, the Patriarch of Hell's voice sounded from the side. "Old Beiyin, there's something I don't understand. Fellow Hell, feel free to speak." Taoist Beiyin could not help but look at him, but he could not help but laugh. In this world, only the Patriarch dared to call him Old Beiyin. Of all the places you could have built the passageway, why did you have to build it in this godforsaken place? The Patriarch of Hell did not give him a good look at all. "What formation did you set up to lock this lousy mountain? Otherwise, why will we take the plane?" As soon as he said that, the rest immediately agreed with him. Even Yi Chun was no exception. Taoist Beiyin did not know whether to laugh or cry as he said, "Fellow Hell, you might not know this, but we didn't set up this passage. It's always existed. Not only the passage to General Mountain, but even the other two passages to the Yin ruins in China are also in remote places." "Actually, that's good," Yi Chun added. "Setting the passage in a remote area can greatly reduce some trouble and prevent outsiders from entering by mistake." "Fellow Yi is right." Taoist Dark North nodded solemnly. "The existence of the Yin ruins is actually a very secretive matter. It's best that the general public doesn't know about it. After all, even we only have the ability to protect ourselves in the Yin ruins." While they were talking, the plane they were on began to descend. The wind from the huge wings uprooted the grass on the ground. What everyone saw was a huge restricted military area. From afar, it looked like a giant city. There were guards stationed around the forbidden grounds, but most of them were ordinary people. Even so, there was still a sentry every 3 steps and a guard every 5 steps. From this, one could tell how much importance the higher-ups placed on this place. Apart from that, there were also densely packed barbed wire protection walls and even infrared lights that would sweep back and forth from time to time. As soon as the group approached the entrance of the restricted military area, a dozen or so figures appeared in front of them like ghosts. These dozen or so people were all deity transformation cultivators. Under the detection of Yi Qin's divine consciousness, he also discovered that there were a few god-slaying cannons on the city wall aimed at them. Taoist Dark North took out his pass and handed it to one of them. After taking a closer look, the person saluted everyone and gestured for them to pass. Everyone was interrogated at every checkpoint. There were even some places that required Taoist Dark North to enter with his fingerprint identification and other highest authority. Yi Qin could not help but nod to himself when he saw everything. With such a tight defense, even a perfected soul formation cultivator would run into a wall if he barged in rashly. Finally, under Taoist Dark North's lead, everyone entered a large hall. The hall was very spacious, and the surroundings were made of alloy materials that could withstand the power of nuclear bombs. What surprised Yi Qin the most was that these materials could even reflect the prying of divine consciousness. This gave him a deeper understanding of the country he was in. At this moment, an old man with white hair walked over quickly and nodded slightly at Taoist Dark North. Elder Bei. After Taoist Dark North nodded, he introduced him to Yi Qin and the rest. Fellow Yi, this is Fellow Guan. He's also the person in charge of the General Mountain Passage. After saying that, he could not help but tease the old man with a smile. Fellow Guan, there's no need for me to introduce the person behind me, right? Of course. The old man shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Then, he bowed to Yi Qin solemnly. I'm Guan Huayan. Greetings, Mr. Yi. Your terrifying achievements outside have really brought honor to China. You flatter me, Fellow Guan. Yi Qin replied with a smile. At this moment, people walked out of the hall one after another. There were the North Sea Temple Master and dozens of others who had arrived earlier. Time is of the essence, so I won't catch up with you one by one. After sizing up everyone, Taoist Dark North suddenly looked at Guan Huayan and said, Fellow Guan, have you found the whereabouts of Fellow Qinshan and the rest? No. Guan Huayan smiled bitterly. The situation in the Yin ruins is a little complicated now. Fellow Qinshan and the rest haven't sent any news for a long time. If it weren't for waiting for you guys, I would have gone in already. Fellow Qinshan, Yi Qin could not help but look at Taoist Dark North. As if sensing his confusion, Taoist Dark North immediately explained, Fellow Yi, Fellow Qinshan is the one you saw traveling with me before you left Earth. This person has been guarding the Yin ruins. I think something has happened to him now. Is he in existence formed by another Tao fruit? Yi Qin thought to himself. Taoist Dark North frowned and immediately looked at Guan Huayan. There's no time to lose. In that case, let's open the passage. A moment later, a huge stone door that was covered in lush green appeared in front of everyone. The stone door was about 30 meters tall, and it emitted a heavy and ancient aura. The patterns and words on it had long since become blurry, as if they had experienced countless years. Huang Quan examined it for a while, then suddenly shouted, Auric essence! Fellow Taoist Yi, this stone door is actually made of auric essence. Yi Qin was shocked as well. The so-called auric essence was a treasure of sharp metal. It was used to seep into magic treasures, multiplying the sharpness and power of the magic treasures. Although such an item was not rare in the cultivation world, it would take some effort to find it. Who would have thought that there would be a stone door completely made of auric essence here? An ordinary piece of auric essence the size of a fingernail can be refined into a magic treasure. Someone actually used so much auric essence to refine this door. Which prodigal did this? The Patriarch of Hell's eyes were red. As he spoke, he rolled up his sleeves and walked forward, wanting to move the stone door away. Yi Qin stopped him, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. All right, even I can't move this door, let alone you. At the same time, his understanding of Yin ruins deepened once again. A mere passage's door was made of auric essence. From this, it could be seen that Yin ruins was extraordinary. All right, let's get moving. Taoist Dark North could not help but laugh. After exchanging glances with Guan Huayan, they each threw out a disc that looked like a magnet. Buzz. The two discs were black and white. As soon as they were thrown out, they imprinted themselves on the stone door and fused together. As divine might surged, the stone door opened heavily. "Let's go," Taoist Dark North said, and took the lead to step into the stone door. Yichin said while smiling, "Yang Tian, you be Astra starred. I'm coming for you." After saying that, he took a step forward, and everyone followed closely behind. Only Yang Hao followed at the back, muttering with a bitter expression, "Uncle Yi, not only did you scold my father, you also scolded me." End of this chapter. Chapter 1465. The ancient stone gate stood between heaven and earth. That desolate and terrifying aura spread out in all directions, causing the depths of one's soul to tremble uncontrollably. When the last figure shot into the stone gate, the ancient gate shook violently. Then, it slowly became illusory and finally disappeared from this world. It was a misty world, as if it was night. The moonlight was pale, and one could vaguely see countless erratic green flames swimming in the air, enveloping a radius of 100 kilometers. Dark, silent, desolate, strange buzz. At that moment, the space suddenly distorted. Then, several figures slowly walked out of the distorted space, followed by dozens of streaks of baleful aura. It was Yi Chun, Taoist Beiyin, and the rest. "Is this the Yin ruins?" As soon as Yi Chun walked out of the spatial rift, he felt his feet sink. His body began to fall rapidly. He adjusted himself hurriedly before stabilizing himself. He was not the only one. Even the Patriarch of Hell and the rest were no exception. Many early-stage soul formation cultivators fell from the sky and landed heavily on the ground. What a powerful law of gravity! After the Patriarch of Hell stabilized his body, a solemn expression flashed across his face. "The law of gravity here is at least 10 times that of Earth. Fellow Taoist Hell is right." Taoist Beiyin smiled faintly and said, "Something that weighs 50 kilograms on Earth is equivalent to 500 kilograms here. The stronger one's cultivation base is, the more terrifying the law of gravity they have to endure. When I first stepped into this place, I was also in a rather sorry state." Someone below cried out in surprise, "Look, what's this?" Everyone looked over and saw a sea of corpses and bones. There were all kinds of skeletons. Some belonged to unknown beasts, while others belonged to humans. They ranged from 1 meter to more than 10 meters. The sea of bones was boundless. From time to time, there would be flickering flames floating into the air from the sea of bones. If there were ordinary people present, they would definitely be scared to death by so many will-o'-the-wisps. So many corpses. Yi Chen's eyes focused slightly. He could not help but look at Taoist Beiyin after sensing the endless vile energy. "Fellow Taoist Beiyin, where are we?" "This is the Demon Corpse Sea, located at the extreme west of Yinsu." Meeting everyone's gazes, Taoist Dark North couldn't help but explain. It said that this place used to be an ancient battlefield that was filled with countless corpses and bones. It could be said that this place is filled with Yin energy, and most importantly, after 10,000 years, these corpses gave birth to Kacha. Before he could finish speaking, an exceptionally clear and ear-piercing sound suddenly rang out from the silent mountain of corpses and sea of bones. Under the pale moonlight, a human corpse that was closest to Yi Chun and the rest stood up slowly. Its pale joints made cracking sounds from moving too much. This sudden and strange scene would probably scare an ordinary person to the point of breaking down on the spot. Someone exclaimed, "It moved!" "Kacha, kacha!" Before the crowd could react, 1, 2, 3 corpses stood up in an extremely strange manner, followed by a series of bone-chilling sounds of joints cracking. The corpses that seemed to have come back to life turned their skulls at the same time. As their chins moved, their empty eyes looked at Yi Chun and the rest. Under everyone's burning gazes, white flames appeared out of thin air between the eyebrows of the corpses that were initially empty. Yi Chun was surprised when he saw that soul fire. With his experience, he naturally knew that there were immortal cultivators, demonic cultivators, ghost cultivators, and corpse cultivators in this world. Corpse cultivators were divided into two types, zombies and undead. A person's body would not rot after death. Due to the special terrain, the corpse transformation was called a zombie. If the corpse decayed and only a corpse was left, and the corpse did not rot after countless years, it would gradually give birth to spirituality. The way this thing gave birth to spirituality was the soul fire, which was also the origin of undead life. Once the soul fire was extinguished, it meant that it would never be reincarnated. Gotcha! In an instant, hundreds of corpses were resurrected. Hundreds of pairs of hollow bone eyes looked at Yi Chun and the rest in a strange manner. The Patriarch of Hell could not help but chuckle. What? Are these ignorant fools trying to rob us? They're at most equivalent to foundation building cultivators. I can turn their bones into ashes in a single breath. The Patriarch of Green Spirit said disdainfully. No, don't be rash. Taoist Beiyin hurriedly stopped everyone and quickly took a few steps forward. He cupped his fists at the hundreds of standing corpses and said, Everyone, I'm from Hope City. This is my identity token. Please do me a favor. After saying that, he immediately flicked his sleeve, and a golden token with a 9-clawed golden dragon imprinted on it landed on the hundreds of corpses. Boom! Suddenly, a white bone hand reached out from the sea of bones. The bone hand easily caught the golden token. Soon after, under everyone's gazes, a silver corpse slowly stood up from the depths of the ground. Then it floated in the air and sized up everyone coldly. There was an incomparably vigorous flame between its brows. From afar, it looked like lightning was being born within it. As it appeared, the hundreds of corpses immediately knelt on one knee and kowtowed to the ground respectfully. Silver corpse. When the Patriarch of Hell saw this, he could not help but be extremely surprised. He clicked his tongue and said, This is obviously an indestructible golden body. It seems like this corpse was also a powerhouse when it was alive. Its cultivation base is probably not lower than perfected soul formation. And at a body cultivator, Yichen added, after ordinary cultivators died, their true origin energy and vital energy would dry up, and their bodies would collapse. If one wanted to maintain the indestructible golden body, they could only do so by focusing on cultivating their bodies when they were alive. So its fellow Taoist Beiyin from Hope City. The silver corpse nodded at Taoist Beiyin indifferently. Then, it looked at Yi Chun and the rest with its hollow eyes. Who are they? Fellow Silver Wing, these people are all from China. I brought them to the Yin ruins to train. Taoist Beiyin said with a smile. Training. The silver corpse seemed to sneer. China actually has such a powerful force. Looks like the other existences in the Yin ruins have underestimated you. With that, he waved his hand, let's go. As soon as he finished speaking, the hundreds of corpses behind him moved aside, opening up a path for everyone. Thank you, fellow Silverwing. Please send my regards to Supreme Lord Triyu when you return. Our country came from the devil corpse, to maintain our friendship. Taoist Beiyin cupped his fist again and threw a storage bag at the former. Then, he led everyone away from the boundless sea of corpses and bones. On the other hand, Yichen looked at the depths of the devil corpse, thoughtfully. He could feel a terrifying aura there. End of this chapter. Chapter 1466. After Yichen and the rest left. Deep underground in the sea of corpse demons, in a mountain of coffins piled up by countless coffins, the silver-winged corpse was kneeling on one knee in front of a huge golden coffin. Lord, I don't understand. We've already agreed to Old Man Tai Chu's agreement. Why did you let the people from China pass? The silver-winged corpse prostrated in front of the golden coffin with his head lowered tightly. He wanted to say something, but hesitated. Are you questioning me? At that moment, a terrifying divine consciousness suddenly swept out from the golden coffin, causing the silver-winged corpse to scream in pain. He felt like his bones were about to fall apart. A gloomy voice came from the golden coffin. Do you believe that if I had attacked just now, the sea of corpse demons would have been destroyed in an instant? What? The silver-winged corpse felt like it was struck by lightning. Lord, are you afraid of that person in the heavenly tomb? No matter how powerful or overbearing that person in the heavenly tomb is, he's still shackled. Moreover, he's voluntarily imprisoned here. He can't do anything to me. The gloomy voice sounded again. What I'm truly afraid of is that one of the people who came with Taoist Beiyin has been waiting for me to attack the entire time. The mad southern yi that old man Tai Chu mentioned. The silver-winged corpse suddenly raised his head as if he had thought of something. Who else could it be other than this person? The voice in the golden coffin sneered. This person can cause such a storm in the outside world. Naturally, he's not someone to be underestimated. It's not worth it for me to become enemies with him over old man Tai Chu. Moreover, this person has slaughtered too many people in the outside world. He's already made enemies all over the world. Now that he's entered the Yin ruins, I wonder how many people want him dead. An hour later, everyone walked out of the sea of corpse demons. What greeted their eyes was a boundless forest. The Patriarch of Hell glanced at Taoist Beiyin in disdain. Old man Beiyin, you're a late-stage soul formation old monster, yet you're so servile to a bunch of bones. The Patriarch's actions were neither righteous nor evil. He would be extremely arrogant when he met someone he could defeat. When he met someone he could not defeat, he would retreat. Previously, in the sea of corpse demons, with his personality, he would naturally kill his way through. Anyone who stood in his way would be crushed. Unfortunately, Taoist Dark North kept gesturing at them with his eyes. Taoist Beiyin looked at everyone when he heard Patriarch Yellow Spring's disdainful words. He couldn't help but shake his head and smile. Everyone might not know, but the demon corpse, see, isn't as simple as you think. What do you mean by that? Luo Tianya could not help but frown. Taoist Dark North took a deep breath, then said, I trust that all of you have seen what happened just now. The corpse demon sea is a world of the dead, and the corpses of those who died long ago have used a different method to survive. For example, the corpse of Silverwing from before. This person was a martial cultivator that was just a step away from the martial god realm. At this point, he could not help but say slowly, the strongest in the demon corpse sea is not him, but the master of the demon corpse sea, Saint Triu. Patriarch Yellow Spring's expression turned grave. Saint Lord Three Nether? Could be a corpse comparable to the void training stage? Everyone's expressions changed. In other words, they had just passed through the territory of a void training stage cultivator? Taoist Beiyin nodded slightly and said, That's why I stopped everyone from attacking earlier. The demon corpse, sea, is sandwiched between the Yin ruins and the General Mountain Passage. Once we become enemies, the consequences will be unimaginable. Isn't it just a broken skeleton? Patriarch Yellow Spring smiled disdainfully. At my peak, I only needed to blow a breath to turn an existence like this into ashes. Fellow Taoist Beiyin is right. Yichin nodded lightly and said, I've also sensed Saint Lord Three Nether's aura. However, from the looks of it, it doesn't have any hostility towards us. He dares to be hostile? Yang Haoqian said fearlessly, When the time comes, Uncle Yi will charge over with his sword and shatter his bones. Let's go. Yichin glanced at him angrily and urged everyone to move forward immediately. It was his first time in the Yin ruins. Unless it was absolutely necessary, he did not want to become enemies with a void training state existence. Of course, if there was really someone who was ignorant, he did not mind attacking. In the quiet forest, dense trees and hundreds of flowers competed with each other. From time to time, there would be birds flapping their wings, and groups of elk could be seen drinking leisurely by the gurgling stream. Compared to the strangeness of the demon corpse sea, the forest before them seemed extremely peaceful. However, everyone noticed that Taoist Baiyin's expression was tense. Old Beiyin, what's wrong with you now? Yang Hao mocked the Patriarch of Hell's tone. Shut up, you little brat. The Patriarch of Hell immediately rewarded him with a stir-fried chestnut. He then turned around to look at Yi Chun and said, Fellow Yi, did you notice? It's too quiet. Yi Chun took a good look at the peaceful forest before him and said calmly, How can there be such a peaceful forest in this chaotic Yin ruins, adjacent to such a strange place like the Demon Corpse Sea? That's right. The Patriarch of Hell nodded slightly. His expression was even more solemn than when he was in the Demon Corpse Sea. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly heard Song Chi say, "Did you guys hear anything?" "Nothing." Yang Hao was confused. Yichen looked into the distance, the sound of reading. Everyone pricked up their ears to listen. As expected, they immediately heard the intermittent sound of reading coming from afar. They could vaguely hear many people, as if an ancient scholar was studying for the exam. "There really is the sound of reading," Shi Qianhan said in surprise. "Strange, why is there the sound of reading in this forest? Let's go, let's go." We can't listen to the sound of reading. Just as everyone was in a daze, they saw Taoist Baiyan's expression change. He did not have time to explain, and he urged everyone to follow him. The direction he was walking in was the opposite of the source of the sound of reading. At that moment, his footsteps suddenly stopped, and he raised his head to look into the distance with a solemn expression. In front of him, a young man had appeared out of nowhere. The young man was dressed like an ancient scholar, and he was holding an ancient book in his hand. The young man's facial features were ordinary. He looked at everyone quietly with an extremely clear gaze. "Tell me, is it the heavens or the people?" Everyone was dumbfounded. Obviously, they did not expect the former to ask them such a question out of the blue. However, Taoist Baiyan smiled bitterly and solemnly cupped his fist at the young man. "Greetings, Lord Qinxiu. I'm Taoist Baiyan from China. We just want to..." Before he could finish, the young man looked at everyone indifferently again and said, "Tell me, is it the heavens or the people?" "Little friend, you're so boring. How can we have the mood to discuss the philosophical question of the heavens or the people with you?" An early-stage soul formation cultivator said impatiently. Then, he gently pushed the young man. "You should move aside. Don't delay us." In the next moment, his entire body stopped abruptly. He did not move at all, as if he had been immobilized. The young man looked at everyone again and repeated, "Tell me, is it the heavens or the people?" End of this chapter. Chapter 1467. Fellow Zishu. Looking at the motionless early-stage God transformation stage cultivator, the patriarch of green spirit and the rest called out subconsciously. Then, they looked at the young man before them in shock. At this moment, they finally realized that the seemingly weak young man before them was not as simple as he seemed. Otherwise, how could he freeze an early-stage God transformation stage cultivator without anyone noticing? At that moment, the powerhouses behind Yi Chun stared at the young man, ready to fight at any time. Yi Wushuang's sword eyes were cold as sword intent surged. The patriarch of Hell's expression froze slightly as he secretly sent a voice transmission to Yi Chun. "Fellow Yi, this person is probably no less powerful than Saint Lord Triu from the Corpse Demon Sea." Yi Chun looked at the young man quietly. Two balls of golden divine fire danced in his eyes as he tried to see through the young man's background. However, under his flaming golden eyes, the young man was still ordinary, as if he was really a weak ancient scholar. It was the first time the flaming golden eyes could not see through anything. There was only one possibility. The young man's cultivation base was higher than Yi Chen's. "Don't be rash," Yi Chen secretly reminded everyone as he thought to this point. His intuition told him that the young man before him was not hostile toward them. "Is it the heavens or the man?" The young man's calm voice still echoed in everyone's minds. Taoist Baiyan's lips moved slightly as he said slowly, "Master Qinxiu, in my opinion, it's naturally the heavens." "Why?" The young man looked at him quietly. Under his gaze, Taoist Baiyan was actually a little nervous. Laozi said in the 25th chapter of the Tao Te Ching that there's something that is born from heaven and earth. It is lonely and indistinct, independent and unchanging. It can be called the mother of heaven and earth. I don't know its name. The word is called Tao, and the strong are called the Da is called death, and death is called distance. Distance is called reverse. Therefore, Tao is big, heaven is big, earth is big, and so is man. There are 4 great regions, and king is one of them. Man follows earth, earth follows heaven, heaven follows Tao, and Tao follows nature. He could not help but explain. Saint Laozi said that Tao was born before heaven and earth. Therefore, Tao is big, heaven is big, earth is big, and so is man. There are 4 great universes in the universe, and man is one of them. Man uses the earth as his law. The earth uses the heaven as its law. The heaven uses the Tao as its law, and the Tao is purely natural, using itself as its law. At this point, he took a deep breath and said, "That's why, in this humble Taoist opinion, the heavens are stronger than the men." However, the young man asked, the Tao Te Ching mentioned that there are 4 great realms in the domain. Tao is great, heaven is great, earth is great, and man is also great. What about the outer domain? What happens when a person breaks through the restraints of heaven and earth and enters another domain? Taoist Dark North froze on the spot, as though he had lost his soul. The young man shook his head slightly. Imitating the views of the ancients, but not understanding them, is foolish. You are destined to stop below the void refinement realm in this life. Guan Huayan couldn't help but say, in this old man's opinion, it's a great man. The young man looked at him expectantly. Guan Huayan said indifferently, 1 man is the great, and 2 men are the heavens. If there were no men, the great heavens would not be able to do anything. Man is the foundation. If there were no substance, how could there be an illusory body? Because this person is the strongest. Well said. That's reasonable. As soon as he finished speaking, he immediately received cheers from the crowd. Obviously, most of them agreed with his opinion. Only Yi Chun, the patriarch of hell, and the rest remained silent. The young man shook his head again. The heavens don't speak arrogantly, and the earth doesn't speak arrogantly. Man is arrogant. Your words just show how insignificant you are and how vain your heart is. Guan Huayan's face turned pale when he said that. Everyone's expressions turned grim. Are you saying that the heavens are great or the people are great? You're not satisfied with answering the heavens, and you're still not satisfied with answering the people? Could it be that you're deliberately looking for trouble? The young man seemed to have not seen half of it. His gaze swept across everyone before finally landing on the patriarch of hell. I wonder if you have any wise opinions, fellow. I don't deserve such praise. The patriarch of hell pulled a long face and sneered. In my opinion, no matter how great the heavens are, they're not as great as me. If the heavens make me unhappy, I'll defy them. If people make me unhappy, I'll kill them. His words, which were rather rebellious in everyone's eyes, caused a ripple to appear on the young man's calm face. The heavens are not as great as me. Interesting, truly interesting. The young man imitated the patriarch's tone and repeated it as if he was praising him. In the end, his gaze landed on Yi Chun. What do you think, fellow? At that moment, everyone looked at Yi Chun in unison. Their eyes were filled with anticipation. To them, Yi Chun was younger than most of them, but he had gone further than them on the path of cultivation. Perhaps he had something extraordinary about his comprehension. Yi Chun did not answer the question, what is human? What is heaven? Everyone could not help but be speechless. The young man pondered for a moment and said, the 4 legs of a cow and a horse are heaven. The head of a horse and the nose of a cow are humans. Therefore, it said, there's no man to destroy heaven, no life to destroy, and no name to be buried. To guard and not lose is to go against the truth. After saying that, he seemed to be worried that the crowd would not understand. So he explained, all living things live as they are. Don't impose human factors on things. This is heaven. Imposing human factors on things, forcing a naked horse to put a cage on it, forcing a hole to pierce a cow's nose, and tying a rope to it. This is human. I've been to school for a few years and read a few books. If I remember correctly, you said that from Zhuangzi's quotations, right? Yi Chun looked at him quietly and said, Zhuangzi's words are about following nature. What is nature? It's the Tao. The heavens and the Tao can't be separated in the end. They merge into the heavenly Tao. Naturally, there will be floods and disasters. Isn't it the power of the heavenly Tao that controls everything? Aren't you telling us that we should follow the heavens? Follow the heavens? Since that's the case, it means that you've already determined that heaven is greater than man. Why do you have to ask me? As his voice fell, The young man suddenly clasped his fists at Yi Chen solemnly. He was extremely sincere. Thank you for clearing my doubts and waking me up. I'm Qinxiu Wuhan. When everyone saw that, they were so shocked that their eyeballs almost popped out, especially Taoist Beiyin. He knew how terrifying and stubborn the young man was. However, he was convinced by Yi Chen with just a few words. Qinxiu Wuhan could not help but look at Yi Chen. He said in anticipation, I wonder if fellow Yi thinks heaven is greater or man is greater. The Tao of heaven takes away the surplus and makes up for the deficiency. The Tao of heaven loves to kill. It doesn't change its will, and it only follows the inherent law. Those who go with the flow will prosper, and those who go against the flow will die. It treats all things like straw dogs. Yi Chen stood with his hands behind his back and said confidently, the way of man is to take away the deficiency and make up for the excess. The world is weak, and the strong will always be strong. The fruit is in the bag of the strong. At this point, he could not help but say, rather than saying that heaven is greater than man, it's better to say that the rules are greater. The reason why heaven is greater is because the rules set by man surpass all living beings. Not only can man set the rules, but he can also break them. Chapter 1468. Dead silence. The surroundings suddenly fell into dead silence. Everyone fell into silence after Yi Chen said that. Even Qinxiu Wuhan was no exception. Ha ha! Suddenly, a burst of laughter erupted from the forest. Qinxiu Wuhan looked at Yi Chen with a smile. Very good, very good. Listening to you is better than reading for 10 years. With just a few words, fellow Yi solved the problem that I've been thinking about for countless years. At the next moment, he stretched out his hand and grabbed at the forest from afar. Then a dark green bamboo flute shot out from the forest. Fellow Yi, this is for you. He looked at the bamboo flute quietly and tossed it to Yi Chen. With this, you'll be my friend from now on. No one will dare to stop you on the way. As soon as he finished speaking, he disappeared. Yi Chen reached out to catch the bamboo flute. He lowered his head and looked at it silently. There was a strange light in his eyes. The bamboo flute contained a concept that belonged to a void refinement stage, almighty. That bastard left just like that. The patriarch of hell looked around and smacked his lips. Everyone answered the question. Why did fellow Yi get the gift? Isn't this bastard too stingy? Fellow hell, please stop talking. Taoist Baiyin's face turned green when he heard that, and he immediately urged everyone to leave. Along the way, someone finally could not help but look at Taoist Beiyin and ask, Taoist Beiyin, who exactly is this Qinxiu Wuhan? From the beginning until now, everyone was confused. They could not understand why Qinxiu Wuhan would stop them, but he did not have any hostility. Instead, he asked such a seemingly absurd question. The forest that we passed through earlier is called the Demon's Soul Forest. Taoist Beiyin stopped in his tracks and turned to look at the deep forest behind him. His lips moved slightly. This person is the master of the Demon's Soul Forest. No one knows how long he has existed. They only know that he has lived in the Yin ruins for countless years. He is a taboo. Even the sage Sanya of the corpse demon, C, has to respect him. As soon as he finished speaking, someone drew a sharp breath. Could it be that this person is also a void tempering stage cultivator? Everyone else's expression changed. They had just entered, but they had already passed through the territories of 2 void training stage old monsters. Were they lucky or unlucky? Fortunately, the 2 of them didn't attack them. I'm not sure. Taoist Dark North nodded slightly. Arcathayans don't know much about this man either. All we know is that he once relied on a single piece of bamboo to slaughter his way into a forbidden zone, and when he returned, his clothes were not stained with blood. At this point, he immediately explained to everyone, Yin Ruins is very big, and it's currently divided into 3 areas, the periphery, the core, and the forbidden area. We're now in the periphery, and the area is no smaller than China. What? Even old ancestor Yellow Spring's expression froze when he heard that. They're already void tempering old monsters guarding the outer perimeter. Doesn't that mean the core and the forbidden area are... Yi Chen's eyes gleamed faintly. No. Taoist Dark North shook his head and said, the terror of the core is not the people, but the mausoleums. It said that countless peerless villains of China from 10,000 years ago are buried there. Apart from that, there are also violent spatial rifts and many geographical dangers. At this point, he was afraid that everyone would not believe him. So he added, I once personally witnessed a perfected soul formation cultivator trying to break into the core from the rift. In the end, he was forcefully killed by a hurricane. Not even his corpse was left, and his soul was destroyed. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air when they heard that. That was a perfected soul formation cultivator. In the outside world, he could practically sweep through the world, yet he could not defeat a hurricane. Yi Chen frowned and said, What about the forbidden area? The forbidden area is an ominous place. Taoist Dark North let out a heavy breath and said slowly, This place hasn't been unsealed yet. It's wrapped in endless black energy. As long as a living person touches a trace of the black energy, their flesh and blood will instantly disappear. Soul, sand again? Yi Chen's eyes flickered. He had encountered the black energy once on the ghost ship and again in the Forbidden Sea. Before he could think too much, Taoist Dark North added, Even the powerhouses of the outer realm are helpless against the forbidden area. It said that a void refinement old monster from the outer realm gathered his disciples and tried to attack the forbidden area. In the end, before he could even step into the forbidden area, he was inexplicably killed by lightning. Everyone could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. Their faces were incomparably pale, and their eyes were filled with intense shock. Even void refinement cultivators could not enter the forbidden area. Wasn't this forbidden area a little too terrifying? The Patriarch of Hell suppressed the shock in his heart. The forbidden area is so strange. It seems like there must be some great opportunity inside. That's right, Taoist Dark North said in a deep voice. It said that the opportunity to become an immortal is in the forbidden area. Therefore, all the living beings in the Yin ruins, including the four immortal sects and the powerhouses of the various countries on Earth, are trying to enter the forbidden area. This Qinshou Wuhan is too terrifying. Yang Hao muttered, Even void refinement cultivators can't enter the forbidden area. But he actually killed his way in with a bamboo pole and even escaped unscathed. Everyone was extremely dazed when they heard these words, and the figure of a young man with graceful bearing that seemed to be extremely weak couldn't help but appear in their minds. Such a person had done something that even void refinement cultivators could not do. At this moment, everyone noticed that countless divine consciousnesses were suddenly spying on them from the void. Before they could react, they were all retracted. Let's go. Guan Huayan's expression changed slightly. He looked around, worried that something would happen again. He could not help but urge everyone to continue moving forward. The Patriarch of Hell walked to Yi Chen's side and said with a cold smile, Fellow Yi, looks like someone wants to attack us. There's no need to guess to know that it's the Heavenly Lord of Absolute Beginning. Yi Chen scanned the void with a cold gaze. Unfortunately, I've overestimated them, so they're all a bunch of cowardly bandits. The Patriarch of Hell could not help but look at the dark green bamboo flute in his hand and said solemnly, It should be because of this. Is it Qinshou Wuhan? Yi Chen mumbled to himself when he sensed the fluctuation of the concept on the dark green bamboo flute. However, what they did not know was that the entire Yin ruins was stirred up because of their arrival. It's been 3,000 years. That person from the demon god forest hasn't appeared for 3,000 years. Now he's actually appeared. Qinshou Wuhan, what kind of trick are you playing? You actually gave the demon god flute to an outsider. Forget it, forget it. Didn't you see that even sage Sayu from the corpse demon Si chose to remain silent? The demon god forest is not to be trifled with, especially that lunatic Qinshou Wuhan. In an instant, many terrifying existences woke up from various corners of the Yin ruins. They sighed and then quietly hid. End of this chapter. Chapter 1469. After passing through the demon god forest, everyone finally saw China's territory in the Yin ruins from afar. Everyone looked forward and saw a huge ravine that was hundreds of meters tall. The ravine was extremely deep and filled with endless poisonous fog. It was impossible to see the bottom. Yichen lifted his eyes and looked into the distance. He immediately saw an endless mountain range behind the ravine. The mountain range was tens of thousands of meters tall, like earth dragons crawling in this vast world. Ancient cities stood tall on the mountain range. They had towering city walls that seemed to have existed for an extremely long time. They were ancient, and the light from the formation was dazzling. Yichun could not help but say after seeing everything, "Is this China's territory in the Yin ruins?" The Yin ruins belonged to the desolate world, and it was filled with danger. Whether it was China, the countries in the world, or the four immortal sects, the first thing they did when they arrived was to conquer their own territory. That's right. Taoist Beiyin and Guanhuayan nodded in unison. After China stepped into the Yin ruins for the first time, we paid a huge price to occupy this place. We sacrificed many fellow cultivators. Does this place have a name? The Patriarch of Hell asked. Taoist Beiyin said, "This place is called Yinhuang Fortress." Yinhuang Fortress? Yichen could not help but nod in praise when he heard that. The fortress where the descendants of Yin and Huang stand. It's a good name, and the terrain is not bad. Relying on a huge ravine, it's easy to defend and difficult to attack. Guanhuayan cupped his fists and said, "Fellow Yi, wait here for a moment. I'll go and inform the people of the fortress to open the passage." With that, he turned around and rushed towards the fortress in the distance. The Patriarch of Hell said unhappily, "Why? Do we need to inform the others to enter?" "Old Beiyin, don't tell me you can't make the decision." The others could not help but nod. Taoist Beiyin could not help but smile bitterly. "You might not know, but I'm not the one in charge of the Yin Huang Fortress. I'm one of the elders." "Who's that?" Yichun frowned. Under everyone's gaze, Taoist Beiyin said with a serious expression, "The person in charge of guarding the Yin Huang Fortress is an extremely ancient senior in China. He's called Lei Yunzi." Lei Yunzi? The others frowned inwardly as if they had never heard of this person before. The Yin Huang stronghold implements the Elders' Council system. There are a total of 13 seats. Fellow Taoist Chunshan and I are members of the Elders' Council. As if sensing everyone's bewilderment, Taoist Beiyin explained, "Senior Lei Yunzi is the Grand Elder of the Council of Elders. He's in charge of the Council of Elders and has the right to veto the Council of Elders." Taoist Beiyin added, "However, Senior Lei Yunzi's whereabouts have always been erratic. As a result, many matters in the Yin Huang stronghold are decided by a vote of the elders." As everyone was talking, they saw Guan Huayan return. His expression was somewhat ugly. "Fellow Taoist Guan, how is it?" Taoist Northfire couldn't help but ask. Guan Huai, and looked at Yichun and the rest in shame. He hesitated to speak. "The fortress refuses to let us in." "What?" As soon as he finished speaking, everyone exploded. Taoist Darknorth's face changed slightly as well. "You're refusing to let us in? How is this possible? Senior Lei Yunzi didn't know it was us?" "Senior Lei Yunzi isn't in the stronghold," Guan Huayan said in a deep voice. "It's not just him. In fact, most of the powerhouses in the stronghold aren't here. The person in charge now is Gu Qing. It was this person who refused to let us in." "Gu Qing?" Taoist Beiyin was furious when he heard that. ****. This person is just one of the members of the Council of Elders. What right does he have to stop us from entering?" What no one noticed was that Yichun frowned silently. Then, he subconsciously glanced at Luo Tianya, Ning Mengtian, and the rest. "Brother Yi, could this Gu Qing be?" Luo Tianya walked to his side and whispered. Even Ning Mengtian, Song Chiye, and the rest had ugly expressions. They had just killed Gu Xian and found out about the existence of the Gu family of the Xianyuan 8 clans. If this Gu Qing was really a member of the Gu family, the consequences would be unimaginable. Yichen nodded slightly and could not help but look at Taoist Beiyin. "Fellow Taoist Beiyin, who is this Gu Qing? I'm not sure about this person's exact identity. I only know that he seems to have come from nowhere and is listed as a member of the Yin Huang Fortress's Council of Elders." Taoist Beiyin shook his head angrily. Then, he seemed to have thought of something and said, By the way, this person's cultivation base is at stage soul formation. Let's go. All of you follow me. I want to see how this Gu Qing is qualified to refuse us entry. With that, Taoist Beiyin flung his sleeves and took the lead to rush towards the black-yellow fortress in the distance. Brother Yi, if this Gu Qing is really a member of the Gu family. Luo Tianyao looked at Yi Chen calmly and said solemnly. The Patriarch of Hell said, "What are you guys talking about? What Gu family?" Yi Chen's lips moved slightly. He immediately told them about the Xinyuan 8 clans and Gu Xian through voice transmission. The Xinyuan 8 clans, the Gu family. The Patriarch of Hell was so angry that he laughed. Fellow Yi, there's no need to guess. This Gu Qing is definitely a member of the Gu family. He's trying to take us down a notch this time. Master, what should we do now? Song Chi frowned. What else can we do? Just kill him and be done with it. The Patriarch of Hell shouted as if he wanted the world to be in chaos. We'll settle the old and new grudges together. Kill Gu Qing first, then destroy the Gu family. Luo Tianya and Ning Mengtian's expressions changed when they heard that. Outside the Yanhuang fortress, in front of the huge heavenly stream, dozens of people stood in the air. Their expressions were solemn as they locked onto the huge city behind the heavenly stream. At that moment, the formation was activated and the light screen covered the sky. There were also countless figures standing on the city walls. Both sides were at daggers drawn, and their auras were terrifying. Taoist Beiyin stared coldly at a black-clothed figure on the city wall and said coldly, "Gu Qing, what are you doing? You're not the only one who has the final say in the Yanhuang fortress. Aren't you afraid of being severely punished by Senior Lei Yunzi for your actions?" Under everyone's gazes, in front of the countless figures on the city wall, there was a black-robed old man with a sinister expression looking down at everyone. It was the Gu Qing that Taoist Beiyin had mentioned. There was also a crescent-shaped mark between his brows. Fellow Taoist Beiyin, why do you say that? Gu Qing smiled coldly. He looked at everyone and said with a fake smile, "I'm only doing this for the safety of the Yanhuang fortress. Please forgive me if I've done anything wrong." Fellow Taoist Beiyin, I'll say it again. You and fellow Guan can come in. As he said that, his sinister gaze could not help but focus on Yi Chen. A fierce gleam flashed through his eyes as he said, "However, apart from the two of you, I'm afraid I can't do anything about the others." End of this chapter. Chapter 1470. As his voice fell, behind Yi Chen, the North Immortal Temple Master and the others were enraged. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that Gu Qing was deliberately targeting them. Luo Tianyao walked over and said with an ugly expression, "Brother Yi, I'm afraid this person is really from the Gu family." Gu family. Yi Chen took a good look at the crescent mark between Gu Qing's brows. A cold smirk appeared at the corner of his lips. You guys are really courting death. The Patriarch of Hell saw the changes in Yi Chen's expression and felt a little excited. Every time Yi Chen revealed such an expression, it meant that someone was about to die. Fellow Gu, the person behind me is Mad Southern Yi of China. Your actions will be punished by the elders, Guan Huayan said after taking a deep breath in. Mad Southern Yi? Hearing that, Gu Qing pretended to be surprised and glanced at Yi Chen. So, you're the Mad Southern Yi who has been causing a commotion in the outside world recently. I've been disrespectful. In the next instant, the smile on his face froze, and he sneered, I don't care if you are Mad Southern Yi or Mad Northern Yi. Today with me, Gu Qing, here, you cannot enter the Yanhuang fortress. Is that so? Yi Chen suddenly chuckled. Taoist Dark North forcibly suppressed his anger, staring straight at Gu Qing. Surnamed Gu, this humble Taoist will ask you one last time. Are you really not going to open the tunnel to the fortress? He was worried that Gu Qing would infuriate Yi Chen, which would lead to an unmanageable outcome. By then, he would be stuck in the middle. If you wanted to open the passageway, you'll have to wait for Lei Yunzi's return. During this period, I'll have to trouble all of you to wait outside. Gu Qing laughed heartily before returning to the city. When he heard these words, Taoist Dark North's face completely changed. In Ruins was full of danger, especially at night. If there was no safe territory, even soul formation cultivators could die. anytime. At this time, his vision suddenly blurred, and then he saw a figure rising into the sky, like a demon coming into being, heading straight for the light screen of the Yan Huang stronghold spirit design. What's that? Everyone was stunned by this sudden scene, and when they reacted to it, they couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Fellow Taoist Yi, within the Yan Huang stronghold, in a spacious residence. As soon as Gu Qing entered, he said coldly, "Pass down my order. Gather everyone and keep an eye on the group of people outside, especially that mad Southern Yi." Hearing this, a mid-deity transformation cultivator wanted to say something but hesitated. "Elder Gu, if we do this, if Elder Lei Yun and the others return, impudent, you dare disobey my orders?" Gu Qing's gaze turned cold, causing the former to lower his head. Then he seemed to have thought of something and said, "At the same time, send a message to Taichu Mountain and ask them to take the opportunity to ambush mad Southern Yi." Before he could finish speaking, he suddenly felt the ground beneath his feet shake violently, as if there was an earthquake. What happened? As Gu Qing's expression changed drastically, someone stumbled into the room and stuttered, Elder Gu, they attacked the city, what?" Gu Qing was shocked at first. Then he smiled disdainfully and said, "The defensive formation of the Yan Huang stronghold was set up by Lei Yunzi. There are also runes imprinted by the Xinyuan 8 clans. Even the heavenly venerable of Taichu Mountain can't do it in a short time. How can they break through it?" With that, his figure flashed, and he immediately appeared on the wall. Boom! In the sky above the Yan Huang stronghold, a golden figure entered the void. His eyes were burning with divine flames, and he naturally wanted to burn this world. The defensive formation of the Yan Huang stronghold below was completely activated. Baleful energy howled, lightning rumbled, and earth fire spewed. Every strand of energy was enough to kill any perfected soul formation cultivator. "That's fellow Yi." At that moment, Taoist Beiyin and the rest stared at Yi Chun in the air. Clearly, they did not expect him to react like that. "Fellow Yi, you can't." Sensing that Yi Chen's aura was rising rapidly, Guan Huayan's expression changed. He seemed to have thought of something and said hurriedly, "You can't. This is the Yan Huang stronghold. You can't act recklessly." Hearing that, Taoist Baiyin's expression changed as well. "Fellow Yi, the Yan Huang stronghold was built by China with great effort. Moreover, the defensive formation was set up by Senior Lei Yunzi. If you act recklessly, the consequences will be unimaginable." "Unimaginable what?" The Patriarch of Hell said lazily, "Isn't it just a lousy formation? If you break it, I'll compensate you." The Patriarch is right. That Gu guy is going too far. We have to teach him a lesson. Yang Hao cheered repeatedly, wishing for the world to be in chaos. Yichen lowered his head and sized up Taoist Beiyin. "Fellow Beiyin, I've always been polite before resorting to force. I can choose not to enter the Yan Huang stronghold, but I and my fellow Taoists can't be bullied." Boom! At that moment, Gu Qing turned into a long rainbow and landed on the stronghold wall. He looked at Yi Chun coldly. "Yi, what are you doing?" After saying that, he narrowed his eyes and said sinisterly, "Don't blame me for not reminding you. If you dare to act recklessly today, even Taoist Beiyin won't be able to protect you. There will be no place for you in the entire China." Although he said that, he could not wait for Yi Chun to cause as much trouble as possible. That was the only way he could make Yi Chun stand in an unjust position and become the target of public criticism. Noisy, Yi Chun scoffed softly. He lowered his head and looked down at the huge stronghold city. His eyes were terrifyingly cold. "Do you guys really think that I'm useless with this turtle shell? Today, I'll show you that any formation can't withstand a single blow in the face of absolute power." He smirked coldly. After saying that, he slowly extended his hand and grabbed towards the distance. Rumble. Under everyone's shocked gazes, a 3,000-meter-tall mountain in the distance suddenly trembled violently. Then, it rose from the ground and charged at Yi Chun at a terrifying speed. At that moment, everyone was dumbfounded. Even Gu Qing, who was originally sneering, was no exception. Before everyone could react, another 3,000-meter tall mountain came from afar with a shocking bang. From afar, it looked like a star was falling. Yi Chen's arm suddenly expanded. Then he grabbed the first 3,000-meter tall mountain from afar and smashed it hard at the fortress's defensive formation light screen below. Bang! In an instant, the entire Yanhuang fortress's defensive formation exploded violently. Mountains collapsed, and countless cracks appeared on the ground. The scene was as if the earth was shaking, black. Within the formation, everyone's faces, including Gu Qing, turned pale. Then they spat out a mouthful of scarlet blood, their faces filled with extreme shock. End of this chapter. Chapter 1471. Bang! Yi Chen grabbed the second mountain and smashed it down. The light screen of the Yanhuang stronghold's defensive formation trembled violently again. The heavenly lightning and earthly fire that had gathered within it exploded and then dissipated one by one. The third one, the fourth one. Yi Chen was like an ancient god who had transformed into a god. He used the purest form of his physical body to hurl mountains that were thousands of feet tall. They landed violently on the Yanhuang Fortress Protective Formation light screen. Boom! Finally, when he threw out the fifth mountain, the defensive spirit designs of the Yanhuang Fortress that the void-tempering old monsters had set up finally exploded layer by layer. Although this formation could block the attacks of Void Refinement Stage powerhouses, there was a limit to it. After all, no Void Refinement Stage powerhouse would ignore the existence of Lei Yunzi and the others like Yi Chen and attack the formation crazily. Taking 10,000 steps back, it was impossible for a regular Void Refinement old monster to have such a terrifying physical strength like Yi Chen's. Taoist Dark North, who had personally witnessed all of this, was completely stupefied. From Taoist Baiyan's perspective, it was almost impossible for Yi Chen to break through the Yanhuang stronghold's formation with his own strength. However, the incomparably violent scene before her greatly shocked her. Even Patriarch Yellow Spring, who was mentally prepared, was so shocked that his eyes almost popped out. Oh my God! Fellow Taoist, Yi is too abnormal. Uncle Yi is invincible, too fierce. Yang Hao watched all of this with a flushed face. He felt as if the blood in his body was about to boil. On top of the city wall, Gu Qing and the others watched this scene in fear, their eyes trembling. Fortunately, the formation can still hold on. Gu Qing could not help but heave a sigh of relief when he saw that the Yanhuang stronghold's defensive formation was still struggling to hold on despite Yi Chen's relentless attacks. Really, Yi Chen suddenly stopped when he heard that. A ferocious gleam flashed through the depths of his cold eyes. I'll show all of you what it means to break all techniques with a single artifact today. His voice fell. The shadow of a golden divine brush suddenly shot out of his body, violently cutting through the air and sweeping everything in its path. It was the Emperor Brush. Yi Chen held the Emperor Brush in his hand and wrote the word break on the formation light screen of the Yanhuang Fortress. In an instant, heaven and earth changed color, and a strange phenomenon appeared. Under the dark clouds, there seemed to be a golden dragon descending from the sky. Accompanied by an earth-shattering dragon roar, it slammed into the light screen of the Yanhuang stronghold's array formation. Not good. The formation is about to break. It was unknown who cried out. After that, the defensive formation, which was known as the strongest defensive formation, completely collapsed. Violent energy swept out in all directions, destroying everything in its path. At that moment, the heavens and the earth were deathly silent. Taoist Dark North seemed to have been petrified. He stared at everything in front of him, completely unmoving. On the city wall, Gu Qing and the others stood stiffly. Their eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. At that moment, the Corpse Demon Sea and Demon God Forest, which were closest to the Yanhuang stronghold, sensed this scene through the void. The Demon Corpse Sea, in the depths of the endless mountain of corpses and sea of bones. A golden coffin stirred, and a voice filled with fear came from within, carrying the 5 mountains and breaking the divine formation. This brat's physical body is truly terrifying. This voice was replaced by a sneer. This person broke Old Ghost Lei Yun's formation. When Old Ghost Lei Yun returns, he will definitely not let this matter rest. It's getting more and more interesting. In the quiet valley of the demon god forest, Qinxiu Wuhan, who was dressed in green, held a willow leaf in his mouth. He faced the mountains alone and blew gently. His clothes were fierce, and he looked elegant. After he finished playing, he looked in a certain direction and muttered, "That fellow in the heavenly tomb, you're quite fast. You took a fancy to this brat before Wuhan." His gaze was clear. Unfortunately, with his current ability, I'm afraid he's still unable to help you escape. Unless this brat can dye the forbidden land with blood in the sky above the Yanhuang fortress. How is this possible? After a short period of dead silence, cries of surprise immediately rang out one after another, and the cries were mixed with trembling. The powerful and terrifying defensive formation of the Yanhuang fortress had been broken by Yi Chen alone. This method is simply too terrifying. Guan Huayan's face was pale as he said in a trembling voice, "It's just that this matter has completely blown up." Good break, good break." Patriarch Yellow Spring laughed arrogantly and said, "I'd like to see what that old man Gu has to say now." As soon as he finished speaking, everyone saw Gu Qing and the others on top of the city wall suddenly turn into black shadows and fly toward the mountain behind the fortress. The leader, Gu Qing, had messy hair and torn clothes. His eyes were bloodshot. Clearly, he was affected by Yi Chen's technique. Bastard, how can this mad southern Yi be so powerful? Even old geezer Lei Yun's formation can't stop him. Gu Qing did not dare to look back. He only focused on escaping with all his might. His eyes were filled with hatred. I have to escape. Only by escaping to where the patriarch is will I have a chance of survival. He shuddered at the thought of what would happen to him if he fell into Yi Chen's hands. However, in the next moment, his footsteps stopped abruptly. Then, he looked at the figure that was blocking his way with incomparable fear. He shuddered and turned around abruptly. His path of retreat was instantly blocked by a sword gleam. Yi Wushuang, who was dressed in white, walked over coldly. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, Hall Master North Sea and dozens of soul formation cultivators surrounded him from all directions, forcefully cutting off Gu Qing's path of retreat. The Patriarch of Yellow Spring chuckled. "Old thing, weren't you quite arrogant earlier? Why are you trying to run now?" Gu Qing's expression could not help but change when he heard that. He then turned around and looked straight at Yi Chen. "Mad Southern Yi, my Gu family is not something you can imagine. If you dare to touch me, the Gu family will not let you off." As soon as he finished speaking, Taoist Beiyin and Guan Huayan could not help but stand up and say in unison, "Fellow Yi, no matter how much of a bastard Gu Qing is, he's still a member of the Elder Group. You can't kill him. If we don't kill him, are we going to keep him alive for the new year?" Yang Hao shouted. The Patriarch of Yellow Spring sneered. "Kill him, extract his soul, burn his bones to ashes, and suppress him for eternity. Kill." The killing intent of Hall Master North Sea and the rest soared. Seeing this, Gu Qing's expression changed again and again, and his tone could not help but soften. "Fellow Yi, I apologize for my impulsive behavior earlier. I hope you won't be impulsive. My Gu family is willing to be on good terms with you." "There's no need." Yi Chen's gaze turned cold as he said coldly, "From the moment your Gu family, Gu Xian, ambushed me, I'm destined to be incompatible with your Gu family." After saying that, he reached out his hand and directly ignored Gu Qing's resistance, capturing him on the spot before forcefully wiping him out. Taoist Beiyin wanted to say something, but hesitated. Subsequently, he met Yi Chen's cold gaze and could only sigh softly. "Fellow Yi, you've caused great trouble." End of this chapter. Chapter 1472. Fellow Yi, you really shouldn't have killed Gu Qing. Seeing that Yi Chen had killed Gu Qing decisively, even Guan Huayan had a bitter and helpless expression on his face. "This person deserves to die. Why didn't you kill him?" The Patriarch of Hell looked at the two of them with disdain. "The two of you are so cowardly. Why are you still talking about cultivation? Daoist Bayan's lips moved slightly, but in the end he could only sigh softly. It's not that I'm cowardly, but that Gu Qing is one of the elders, and he's also from the Gu family. So what? Fella, you can even flatten the Taichu dojo. Isn't it just a small Gu family? The patriarch of hell became more and more disdainful. So what if I killed him? I've never regretted it. Yi Chen's expression did not change as he said calmly, today's matter has two witnesses. Black and white will be decided. If the elders intend to help Gu Qing, then I'll take it on. After saying that, he slowly landed on the ground and walked back the way he came. Without turning his head, he said, Patriarch, let's go. Seeing this, Daoist Beiyin could not help but ask subconsciously, Fellow Yi, where are you going? Since the Yin Huang fortress doesn't welcome me, then I won't be thick-skinned and force you to stay. Yi Chan said calmly, the world is vast, so there's naturally a place for me. That's right. If this place doesn't want me, there will be a place for me. The Patriarch of Hell was the first to follow, followed by Yang Hao, Luo, Tinya, and the rest. Daoist Bayan's expression immediately changed, and then he chased after him. Fellow Yi, this is all because of Gu Qing. I hope you won't take it to heart. That's right, fellow Yi. We never said that you're not welcome to enter the Yin Huang fortress. Guan Huaiyan explained bitterly. I understand your intentions. Yi Chen turned around and looked at them. My actions this time are undoubtedly a slap in the face to the elders. At the same time, I've also formed a grudge with the Gu family. Instead of staying under someone else's roof, it's better to find another way out. With that, he left with a large group of people under Daoist Beiyin and Guan Huaiyan's gazes. Beside this matter, Guan Huaiyan smiled bitterly. Daoist Northfire shook his head slightly, his face ashen. It's all Gu Qing's fault. Once the Council of Elders returns, I will definitely report this matter to Elder Thundercloud. I refuse to believe that the Gu clan can hide the truth from the Council of Elders. On the desolate land, the soil was extremely dark and cold, as if the soil of the underworld had enveloped this world. Countless shrubs growing in the black soil were like monsters that had awakened from the nine hells. They extended their branches that looked like hideous arms and hunted all living beings that passed by. Ka. As Yi Chen and the rest walked past, countless demonic trees that were soaked in demonic energy extended their branches and vines and charged at the former. Courting death, the old ancestor Yellow Spring opened his mouth and spat out a wisp of fire. The fire swept out and directly incinerated the tentacles that were approaching. Although there was only a trace of the fire, it extended back along the tentacles, and then all kinds of strange cries of babies could be heard. Get lost, the old ancestor Yellow Spring shouted. The many demonic trees that were originally blocking everyone's path seemed to have intelligence. They retreated into the distance frantically, instantly opening up an extremely spacious path for everyone. Only then did the old ancestor Yellow Spring lower his head and grab a handful of soil that seemed to have been soaked in ink. He sniffed it lightly and said with a frown, Fellow Yi, there's such powerful demonic energy here. It's indeed demonic energy. Yi Chen nodded lightly and said, However, where did so much demonic energy come from? It's tainted this place to such a state. Even the original creatures have been demonized. Orthodox cultivators mainly relied on absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to cultivate, and demonic energy was undoubtedly a fatal poison to them. Demonic energy only existed in the devil world. However, Insu was densely filled with demonic energy. Yi Chen and the Patriarch could not help but be puzzled. Everyone looked at their feet with serious expressions. At the same time, they were extremely careful not to breathe in any of it. There are only two possibilities. The old ancestor Yellow Spring frowned and said, Firstly, there might be creatures from the devil world in Insu. Secondly, the demonic energy from the devil world has seeped into Insu. Yi Chen's eyes flashed imperceptibly when he heard that. Of the patriarchs, two speculations. The first one was fine. If it was the second one, it would be a calamity for Insu and even Earth. When the demonic energy descended, it would turn into a sea of demonic energy that would assimilate everything. All living beings, including humans, would turn into demonic creatures that had lost their minds and become puppets of the demons. Yichen could not help but turn around and say to everyone as he thought to this point, Insu is not simple. Everyone, be careful. The old ancestor Yellow Spring's expression was solemn as well. Although he was known as a demon in the cultivation world before he died, he knew that he was far inferior to the people of the devil world. Songchia looked around and could not help but ask, Master, where are we going next? Let's find a place to stay first, Yi Chan said after thinking about it. He was not familiar with Insu at the moment. He could only find a place with more people to understand more before talking about other things. The reason why he came to Insu was firstly to find something to prolong Su Yuhan's life. Secondly, it was to find Yang Tian and the immortal slaying flying saber. The only thing that puzzled him was that he could not sense the aura of the immortal slaying flying saber, even though he was in Insu. Thinking to this point, he could not help but ask to himself, Emperor, can you still sense the aura of the immortal slaying flying saber? Your Majesty, the aura in Insu is too mixed. I can't sense the whereabouts of the immortal slaying flying saber, Emperor Brush said in a deep voice. The Night Demon Armor chuckled and said, The immortal slaying flying saber loves to fight people. Could have been killed? Could it be that he's in the core or the forbidden area? Yichen's eyes flickered as he thought to himself. As night fell, an extremely huge crimson moon enveloped the sky. The moon was extremely huge. From afar, it looked like a stone mill. There was a bonfire burning on the ground, accompanied by the fragrance of meat. This moon is really ugly. Yang Hao looked up at the crimson moon above his head as he chewed on a piece of roasted meat. Uncle Yi, do you think this moon is the same as the moon on Earth? Just as he finished speaking, someone suddenly said, Look, that moon seems to be growing bigger. Everyone immediately looked over and were surprised to find that the crimson moon above their heads was growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. At first, it was only the size of a stone mill, but in the end, it was no different from a dustpan. The strangest thing was that the moonlight that the crimson moon shone down made people feel irritated uncontrollably, as if the most primitive desire in their hearts was gradually awakened. Roar! At this moment, waves of earth-shattering and violent roars suddenly rang out in the originally silent world. Into this chapter, Chapter 1473. Rumble. Immediately after, the entire ground began to shake violently, as if thousands of troops and horses were fighting and beasts were galloping. In this desolate land, ferocious beasts roared and giant birds tore the sky apart. It was completely chaotic. Luo Tinya turned pale with fright. What happened? Roar. Before the crowd could react, the roar of a huge beast reverberated in their direction. Then, they saw a giant bull with a body of 500 feet tall. Its entire body was as red as blood, tearing through a mountain, bringing with it an endless stench of blood. Beast attack! Someone exclaimed. In the next moment, everyone felt the sky darken. They saw a huge black shadow covering the sky, completely covering a radius of 300 meters above the ground. It was a black, ferocious bird that was over 300 meters long. When it spread its wings, it was like a small mountain. The giant bird split the sky and flapped its wings. Like a huge dark cloud, it descended from the sky and headed straight for the blood-red bull that was running on the ground. Moo! The blood-red bull's eyes were like a bell, and the pair of red horns on its head suddenly expanded. It seemed to have turned into two peerless weapons as it charged at the giant bird. Boom! An intense battle immediately broke out between the two. Every strike caused heaven and earth to tremble, and the aftermath of the explosion even shattered all the surrounding mountains. They're not coming for us. Retreat. Yichen swept his sleeve and carried Song Chia, Yang Hao, and the rest as he retreated to a safe distance. After everyone landed, they were all shocked by the terrifying battle scene in the distance. This is a battle between two perfected god transformation stage demonic beasts. Fortunately, Their target isn't us. Yang Hao's face was a little pale. On the other hand, Yi Chun took a deep look at the crimson moon above his head that seemed to have been soaked in blood. He then looked at the two beasts fighting intensely in the distance and revealed a thoughtful expression. Rumble. The two beasts that were comparable to perfected god transformation stage fought to the death, staining each other with blood and burning everything around them. Roar. At this moment, a blood-colored dragon broke out from the ground and joined the battle in the distance. The battle was intense, and its momentum was shocking. It shook the surroundings like a soul-sucking demonic sound, causing everyone to feel immense pressure. Fellow Yi, they seem to be out of control. Patriarch Yellow Spring fixed his eyes on the fierce battle in the distance. He looked at the huge crimson moon above his head and said, "There's something wrong with this moon." As soon as he said that, a furious roar suddenly came from the crowd behind Yi Chun. Then, an early-stage god transformation stage cultivator attacked the person beside him with bloodshot eyes. The man was caught off guard and immediately screamed, "Fellow Daoist Songyang, what are you doing?" At the same time, 3 more people lost control and attacked the people around them. "Are you guys crazy?" The North Immortal Hall master roared. Yi Chun's eyes turned cold when he saw that. He took a step forward and suppressed them on the spot. At the same time, he unleashed the heavenly dragons, ate music, and roared, "Everyone calm down. Don't let your imagination run wild." As soon as he finished speaking, someone immediately sat down cross-legged and chanted the clear mind incantation in an attempt to calm himself down. Seeing that Yang Hao was showing signs of losing control, the Patriarch of Hell immediately pointed a finger between his brows. Only then did Yang Hao's face turn pale. Yi Chun said again, "There's something wrong with this moon. It can bewitch people. Don't fall for it." Fortunately, this process did not last long. Everyone realized that the crimson moon in the sky began to shrink. In the end, it returned to the size of a jade plate, and its color changed from blood red to pale white. Roar. At the same time, the outcome of the battle between the 3 beasts in the distance had been decided. 2 were dead, and 1 was injured. In the end, the one that survived was the ferocious bird that was over 300 meters long. The ferocious bird's crimson eyes landed on Yi Chun and the rest. It seemed like it wanted to attack them. Yi Chun scoffed coldly as his terrifying divine consciousness swarmed over. "Evil creature, I'll kill you if you don't scram." Rumble. The ferocious bird felt an explosion in its head as if it had been struck by lightning. It shuddered immediately and glanced at Yi Chun in fear. It flapped its wings that were on the verge of breaking and flew into the sky. At the same time, the countless beast roars from all directions returned to silence. Only the smell of blood rippled in the wind. Only then did everyone heave a sigh of relief. Shi Qianhan recalled the dangerous scene from before and said with a pale face, "Brother Yi, what about the moon just now?" "That is the crimson blood moon." Yi Chun said slowly, "This item can bewitch people and make everything go berserk. If I hadn't reminded you guys in time, I'm afraid you guys would have lost control." As soon as these words were spoken, everyone felt extremely fortunate. This place is too scary. Ancestor Azure Spirit was still in a state of shock as he said, "Just one blood moon caused such a huge commotion. Who knows what awaits us in the future?" Ka ka ka. At this moment, the sound of joints cracking suddenly rang in everyone's ears. Then, everyone saw a skeleton suddenly stand up from the swamp in the distance. It was a human skeleton that was roughly 8 meters tall. There was an extremely dim white flame between its brows. It only had 1 leg bone, which made it extremely difficult for it to stand. The strangest thing was that the front of its skull was facing the back of its waist. Then, it lowered its head as if it was searching for something in the swamp. In the end, it actually took out a thigh bone and attached it to its leg. However, that thigh bone did not seem to belong to it. It seemed a little short. Even after it was barely attached, its legs were 1 high and 1 low. Damn, why is it this thing again? Yang Hao's scalp tingled, and he could not help but curse. Ka ka ka. At that moment, it seemed to have noticed Yi Chun and the rest. Its dim soul fire flickered a few times. Then, It walked over slowly with its back facing Yi Chun and the rest stiffly. What is it trying to do? Yang Hao took a step back subconsciously. Even though the human skeleton looked very weak, as if it could be crushed with a single stomp, its terrifying appearance still gave him goosebumps. Yi Chun watched it approach quietly. He did not attack, because he did not sense any hostility from it. After the human skeleton walked before them, it seemed to be sizing them up in a daze. It could not understand Yi Chun and the rest's physique and appearance. Eventually, it fixed its gaze on Yang Hao. It walked over and pointed at Yang Hao. Then, it pointed at its reverse skull. F***CK, what are you doing? Yang Hao wanted to kick it by instinct. Patriarch Yellow Spring chuckled gloatingly and said, "Little brat, it wants you to help it straighten its head." What? Yang Hao's face turned pale immediately. He immediately shook his head like a rattle drum. However, the human skeleton continued to gesture at him. In the end, Yang Hao could not argue with it. He gulped and placed his trembling hand on its skull, gently straightening it. After he was done, he hurriedly said, "All right, get out of here." However, the human skeleton shook its head. It then turned around slowly and waved at them in an extremely stiff manner. What does it mean? Yang Hao was confused. Yi Chun said in thought, "It seems to be asking us to follow it. It seems to be bringing us somewhere." End of this chapter. Chapter 1474. Late at night, everything was silent. The world seemed to have fallen into a deathly stillness. Only the pale moon was looking down at the earth, giving people a strange feeling of oppression. Crack, crack, crack. Under the pale moonlight, a human-shaped skeleton could be seen walking stiffly in the middle of the swamp, with a dim soul fire flickering between its eyebrows. The people who were following behind the humanoid skeleton were confused. Where is it taking us? Follow it. Yi Chun took a good look at the humanoid skeleton walking at the front. An undetectable gleam flashed through his eyes. Logically speaking, existences like the undead were concentrated in the corpse demon sea, but everyone was still a long distance away from the corpse demon sea. Why would there be a humanoid skeleton? Crack, crack, crack. At that moment, the humanoid skeleton suddenly stopped. It moved its stiff joints and lowered its head to size up the gray area in the distance. Faintly discernible, a faint black aura spread out from the gray area in the distance. From afar, it looked like a patch of dark clouds. "Be careful, it's zombie miasma," Yi Chun reminded everyone. "It's very likely that there are zombies here." As soon as he said that, a roar suddenly came from the gray area. Then, a furry black shadow jumped out. Behind it were 3 humanoid skeletons. When he saw that the black shadow was just a black zombie, the Patriarch of Hell could not help but laugh. It's really a zombie, but it's just a black zombie. Its level is too low. At most, it's equivalent to a foundation building cultivator. Tap, tap, tap. Although the black zombie was standing straight, its movements were extremely agile. It was like a black hurricane as it charged towards the humanoid skeleton in front of everyone. At the same time, the 3 humanoid skeletons behind it also joined forces to attack the former. Clearly, they had planned this for a long time. "Be careful," Yang Hao reminded subconsciously. Under everyone's gaze, the humanoid skeleton leading the group advanced instead of retreating. With a whoosh, it took the initiative to meet the 3 stiff skeletons. Swoosh! The humanoid skeleton's speed was extremely fast. Its bright white bone claws landed on the 3 stiff skeletons one after another. The zombie in the lead was instantly chopped into 2 halves at the waist by the skeletal claws, and the 3 skeletons behind it had their skulls chopped off. This was a battle where they had the advantage in numbers. Following the powerful counterattack of a humanoid skeleton, the final result could be said to be out of everyone's expectations. At this moment, even Patriarch Yellow Spring, who had been indifferent all this while, was shocked. One had to know that the humanoid skeleton in front of them was so weak that it was only at the spirit gathering stage. Yet it was able to easily kill a Foundation Establishment stage black zombie and 3 skeletons of the same level. Immediately after, the human-shaped skeleton slowly walked toward the 3 skulls on the ground, its mouth moving up and down. It actually absorbed the soul fire between the eyebrows of the three skeletons. At the same time, the originally dim soul fire between its eyebrows became much more condensed, and the flame gradually turned from white to red. Even the color of its bones had turned red. At that moment, the patriarch of Hell's expression changed completely. Fellow Yi, it can actually devour its own kind. Yi-chan stared fixedly at the humanoid skeleton that had undergone a transformation. His star-like eyes flickered nonstop. Undead were also known as undead creatures. The way they advanced was usually to cultivate their own soul fire. As the soul fire grew stronger, they would advance. This process often took thousands of years. However, among them, there were some favored children of fate who could devour the soul fire of their own kind to advance. However, such existences were usually not allowed by the heavenly Tao. Every time they appeared, they would be destroyed by the heavenly punishment. Now, they had witnessed a favored child. The patriarch of Hell looked at the transformed humanoid skeleton quietly. It has advanced. It's no weaker than the foundation establishment stage now. This person must have been extraordinary when he was alive. That's right. Yicha nodded lightly. The classification of undead was not as complicated as that of cultivators. Their strength was measured by the strength of the soul fire, and the strength of the soul fire was differentiated by color. From low to high, they were red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple. Above them were silver and gold, just like the silver skeleton known as Silverwing that Yi Chun had seen in the corpse demon sea earlier. Crack, crack, crack. At that moment, the red skeleton lowered its head and reached out its bone claws to easily pierce through the black zombie's heart. Then, it took out a black crystal core about the size of a pigeon's egg. It held the black crystal core, just like that, then turned around and walked towards the crowd. It gently handed it to Yang Hao as its mouth made a gurgling sound. "What is it doing now?" Yang Hao said with a grim expression. The patriarch of Hell laughed gloatingly. "It wants to give this zombie's corpse core to you for you to eat." "What?" Yang Hao was stunned. He looked at the black crystal core and said subconsciously, "What's the use of eating this? Can it make me invulnerable like a zombie?" "Sure." The patriarch of Hell chuckled and said, "Not only can it make you invulnerable, but it can also make you a zombie." Yang Hao's face turned green when he heard that. He shook his head like a rattled drum. "No, I don't want it." The others could not help but laugh when they saw that. When the red skeleton saw that, it had no choice but to stick the crystal core between its brows. It used its soul fire to melt it into energy and then absorbed it. It could even absorb a zombie's crystal core? Yi Chun and the patriarch of Hell could not help but look at each other when they saw that. They saw the shock in each other's eyes. The red skeleton turned around and walked out of the swamp again. It would turn around and wave at the crowd from time to time as it walked. Yang Hao had goosebumps. He really did not want to continue following. He said while swallowing his saliva, "Uncle Yi, why don't we go back? It's fine. Let's follow and take a look." Yi Chun patted his shoulder while smiling and gestured for everyone to follow. He was getting more and more interested in the skeleton. After an hour, everyone followed the red skeleton from afar to a place overlooking a cliff. Although it was a cliff, it was extremely wide. It was enough to build a small village with 200 people living on it. However, the strange thing was that the cliff was a barren land. There were no plants or living creatures at all. It was barren, and there was only extremely pitch-black land mixed with scarlet liquid. As soon as everyone arrived, they felt an unusually hot temperature coming at them, as if they were in a furnace. "It's so hot, so hot," Yang Hao complained. The red skeleton did not stop at all. It led everyone forward and finally stopped in front of a huge rock. "What's that?" Someone pointed at the fire in the distance. Everyone immediately looked over and saw a huge volcano crater. The most shocking thing was that there was a resplendent treasure light shooting out from the volcano crater. They could vaguely see ancient buildings standing inside. Chapter 1475. What a powerful treasure light. The patriarch of the Heaven Nether sect in the crowd ignored the scorching heat around him and stared fixedly at the crater in the distance. The patriarch of Hell said, "There seems to be a building in the crater. This should be a ruin." Yichen activated his golden pupil-fiery eyes and immediately saw an ancient hall floating in the magma in the crater. The ancient hall was dazzling with golden light as it floated. There was a faint aura of time flowing on it. Hearing that, the originally listless Yang Hao immediately perked up. Ruin? Doesn't that mean there's a treasure inside? There's definitely a treasure. The problem is, do you have the ability to take it? The Patriarch of Hell looked at him in disdain. Yang Hao's face fell at first. Then he smiled at the Patriarch and said, Patriarch, don't we have you and Uncle Yi? Why did Yang Tian give birth to a brat like you? The Patriarch of Hell scolded as he smiled and enjoyed it. At this moment, Song Chia suddenly said, What is it doing? Everyone immediately looked over and saw that the red skeleton that had stopped earlier was actually walking towards a crater, as if it was not afraid of the scorching heat. It's going into the crater? Yang Hao's eyes widened. He could not help but say, Idiot, you can't withstand that temperature. Come back. The red skeleton suddenly stopped and gestured at the crowd, as if asking them to wait for it. After that, it walked towards the crater again. Yang Hao shook his head repeatedly. Crazy. This guy is really crazy. I wonder which old bastard buried him here and even used volcanic magma as the foundation. He deserves to be robbed. The Patriarch of Hell looked at Yi Chun and said while rubbing his palms, Fellow Yi, should we go and take a look? Yi Chun watched as the red skeleton approached the crater. He smiled and said, There's no rush. Let's wait a little longer. Following that, everyone fell into silence. All of them widened their eyes as they looked in the direction of the crater. After an unknown period of time, the silent night was suddenly broken by an angry voice. Which bastard disturbed your grandfather's sleep? It's you again, little skeleton. You wait for Grandpa. Don't run. As a series of curses came from the crater, a red figure rushed out of the crater like the wind. It was the red skeleton from before. As he ran, he gestured at the crowd, as if reminding them to run quickly. In his hand was a volcanic Oregon. Immediately after, a red shadow also rushed over from behind. Ga. As the red skeleton ran toward Yi Chun and the rest, it closed its mouth and seemed to be rather proud of itself. In the end, it rushed into the crowd and hid behind Yang Hao in an extremely comical manner. It even used its two bony hands to hug Yang Hao's waist tightly from behind, as if it was afraid. Holy shit, Yang Hao is almost scared to death. He struggled with all his might. Damn you. Hurry up and let me go. Men and women shouldn't touch each other. No, who knows if you were a man or a woman when you were alive. You might even be gay. The red figure that was chasing after it finally came to a halt when it was less than 100 feet away from the group. The red shadow was only the size of a palm. Its entire body was covered in golden lumps. It had 3 legs, and from afar, it looked like a 3-legged toad that had been bathing in fire. The Patriarch of Hell was dumbfounded. What's that? A 3-legged toad? Toad my ass. Your whole family is toads. As soon as he finished speaking, the golden toad immediately panicked as if it had been extremely humiliated. My name is Skyfire Divine Toad, not a toad. The Patriarch of Hell's face was filled with disdain. How dare you call yourself a Skyfire Divine Toad? Isn't it just 1 leg less than an ordinary toad? F***CKU. The golden toad went berserk and cried out in anger. Then, it leaped toward the Patriarch of Hell. Aya, you're bullying the Patriarch? You won't know how powerful I am if I don't remove your 3 legs. The Patriarch of Hell exclaimed in surprise. Then he stretched out his hand and turned it into a huge hand that grabbed at the former from afar. Whoosh! However, to everyone's surprise, the Patriarch of Hell's hand missed. Immediately after, the golden toad leaped close to him and cursed. I curse you to have pus on the soles of your feet and sores on the top of your head. Under everyone's horrified gazes, a big red sore suddenly appeared on the old ancestor's forehead. The Patriarch was stunned. The golden toad's saliva splattered. I curse you to be hit by a meteorite while walking. Boom! At that moment, a colossal object suddenly descended from the sky like a huge mountain. Then, it smashed toward the Patriarch of Hell. Bang! Yi-chun extended his hand and destroyed the patriarch before he could attack. Then he slapped the golden toad. Roar! The golden toad could not dodge in time and suffered a heavy blow. It immediately cried out in pain and was sent flying, smashing through a mountain. Then, everyone stared at the patriarch of hell, their gazes focused on the red sores on his forehead. Holy sh**t. What kind of technique is this? Yang Hao is dumbfounded. He subconsciously distanced himself from the patriarch in disdain. The others also had goosebumps. At their cultivation base, a mere curse technique could not attack them. However, the patriarch had fallen for it. None of them had seen such a strange technique before. Many people rejoiced when they thought of this. If they had been cursed by the golden toad earlier, they would probably have fallen for it too. Only Song Chia held back his laughter and looked at the patriarch. Patriarch, come. Take off your shoes and let us see if there's any pus. The corners of the patriarch of hell's mouth twitched. Get lost. At the same time, he felt goosebumps. He was at soul formation stage, but he had fallen for a toad's curse. Losing face was a small matter, but getting rid of the sore was a big matter. Thinking to this point, he hurriedly reached out and rubbed the bumps on his forehead. To his horror, these bumps could not be removed at all. He said to Yi-chun while gritting his teeth, "Fellow Yi, capture that damn three-legged toad for me. I'm going to skin it." Interesting. Yi-chun smiled faintly. Subsequently, he could not help but look in the direction where the golden toad was sent flying. With his golden, pupil-fiery eyes, he immediately saw the golden toad hiding in a mountain, revealing a pair of green pea-sized eyes that were staring at the crowd. Yi-chun looked at it with a faint smile. "Do you want me to invite you out? Or do you want to come out yourself?" End of this chapter. Chapter 1476. As soon as Yi-chun said that, the toad that was hiding in the huge mountain closed its eyes subconsciously and did not move. Clearly, it was trying its best to hide itself. It was extremely confident in its breath concealment technique. It had successfully tricked countless people with this technique. Even void refinement old monsters would not be able to discover it if they did not look for it on purpose. Yi-chun could not help but laugh when he saw that. "Let's talk. You should be able to feel that I have no ill intentions towards you. This damned three-legged toad. Let's see if I don't skin you alive." The patriarch of hell carried a few big bumps on his head and directly rushed towards the mountain where the toad was. At the same time, he activated his great divinity. Just as the patriarch was about to break the mountain, the toad suddenly moved. After shaking a few times, it opened its mouth and spat at the patriarch. Swoosh! Suddenly, the sword gleam slashed at the patriarch. Clang! The patriarch activated his divinity and collided with the sword. He could not help but take a few steps back. When he looked again, the sword gleam floating in the air was a flying sword that flickered with moonlight. The flying sword whistled and surged, and the sword gleam was brilliant. Divine spirit treasure? Someone could not help but exclaim when they saw that. Divine spirit treasures were almost top-notch among spirit treasures. Even perfected God transformation cultivators would only use divine spirit treasures. However, the toad in front of him spat out a divine spirit treasure. Seeing that the flying sword did not hurt the patriarch, the toad was shocked and spat at the patriarch again. Chirp! Under everyone's gazes, a red figure that looked like a vermilion bird let out a long cry and charged at the patriarch of hell with terrifying divine flames. "Break for me!" After the patriarch of hell used a sharp finger to disperse the red figure with all his might, what he saw was a red ribbon fluttering in the air. Another divine spirit treasure. This time, even the old ancestor was a little shocked. Even Yi-chun was surprised. A mere toad spat out two divine spirit treasures consecutively. Moreover, they did not acknowledge him as their master. Whoosh! Taking advantage of this gap, the toad leaped and shot toward the horizon at an incredible speed. Yang Hao hurriedly shouted, "Ancestor, that guy ran away." Patriarch Yellow Spring was about to give chase. "Damn toad, where are you going?" At this moment, a bolt of lightning blasted over from the direction the toad was fleeing in, revealing a golden hammer bathed in lightning. F***CK. Another divine, spiritual treasure. Old ancestor Yellow Spring couldn't help but curse out loud after being struck by lightning. This guy is so fat. He actually has so many divine spirit treasures. Yang Hao's eyes immediately turned red. Uncle Yi, catch it. We must catch it. There must be other treasures in this guy's stomach. Fat sheep. A proper big fat sheep. Yi Chen looked in the direction where the toad escaped. He smiled lightly and teleported immediately. Less than 100 miles away from the crater of the volcano, the environment was damp, and the croaking of frogs could be heard. Under the pale moonlight, one could see countless frogs lying in the depressions. Croak, croak, croak. Every toad moved its abdomen and let out croaks. The croaks rose and fell, covering a radius of a kilometer. At that moment, Yi Chun landed lightly above the depression. He lowered his head and looked down quietly. Two divine flames burned in his eyes. After a while, he suddenly smiled and landed next to a small depression in the corner. In the depression that was less than 20 meters in front of him, there were a dozen toads singing with incomparable joy. Every toad was almost identical in size and appearance. Croak, croak, croak. As Yi Chun, the outsider, suddenly barged in, the dozen or so toads jumped and fled in all directions like frightened rabbits. They seemed to be cursing. A four-legged toad was mixed in with the group of toads, pretending to be frightened as it hopped around unhurriedly. You're smart. You know how to hide in a group of toads and try to fool my senses. However, it's useless. Yi Chen stood in front of him and said while chuckling softly, Brother Toad, there's no need to do that in front of me, right? Croak, croak, croak. However, the toad acted as if it did not hear him. Like the other toads, it continued to jump at a steady pace. I've tried to persuade you again and again. Since you don't want to listen, don't blame me. Yi Chen's eyes were slightly cold. He extended his hand and cast the gravity tactic at the toad from afar. His attack seemed ordinary. If a perfected god transformation stage cultivator were to face it, they would not be able to resist at all. However, to Yi Chen's surprise, the toad dodged his power in an extremely ingenious manner. Then, it turned around and spat at him. Boom! In an instant, a terrifying, bloody gleam shot out of its mouth. Subsequently, it turned into a surging river of blood that charged at Yi Chen. The river of blood seemed to be burning. It dyed the entire sky red as soon as it appeared, and it even melted the space within a radius of 3,000 meters. Even Yi Chen, who was prepared, was finally moved when he saw that the river of blood was a red spirit talisman. Drought Demon Blood Talisman. The so-called Drought Demon Blood Talisman was a type of spirit talisman. It was refined from the blood of a drought demon, and it could inherit 100% of a drought demon's power. Suppress. At the critical moment, Yi Chen shouted softly. Emperor Brush appeared in his hand, and he quickly wrote a word at the surging river of blood. Buzz. As soon as the word suppress was written, it immediately turned into an invisible cage that enveloped the river of blood, attacking a radius of 3,000 meters. The river of blood stopped. At its core, the spirit talisman that was burning with flames trembled violently a few times before it was finally frozen in the air. The toad was so shocked that its eyeballs almost popped out. Impossible! How can you control my drought demon blood talisman? In the next moment, a large hand suddenly appeared. It streaked across the sky like a bolt of lightning, and then it grabbed him in its hand. The toad struggled and let out all sorts of ghostly howls. Let go of Grandpa. Otherwise, Grandpa will call my big brother and second brother out to kill you in minutes. Who are your big brother and second brother? Yi Chen said while smiling. My big brother swept through Insu. No one dared to provoke him. Even that poor scholar from the Demon God Forest didn't dare to provoke him. The toad was extremely proud. My second brother is the second brother of Insu. He once killed his way into the Forbidden Zone and dyed it with blood. He can kill you with a single breath. Is that so? Yi Chen's eyes lit up. The former's two senses revealed a lot of things. He exerted force with his arm as he thought to this point. His strength was enough to crush a great mountain, but the toad only roared loudly and wasn't injured at all. Chapter 1477. My big brother and second brother are on the way. Pretty boy, you're dead. My second brother won't even care about you when he's angry. The toad continued to roar. Yuchen smiled lightly. A ball of divine fire suddenly bloomed in his hand, and he refined the toad on the spot. I suddenly feel like eating supper in the middle of the night. I don't have roasted frogs, but roasted toads should be fine. Ah! The toad really screamed this time because it realized that its skin was starting to burn under Yi Chen's divine fire. Do you surrender? Yi Chen asked. The toad's body emitted a golden glow. No, Grandpa doesn't surrender. Give me a few years if you're capable. I'll definitely beat you up by then. Do I like medium rare or medium rare? Yi Chen held his head down and proceeded to refine it. Putting aside the fact that the toad was full of treasures, most importantly, it had revealed many secrets of Insu. Yi Chen was curious about it. The toad was speechless. It did not know if it was an illusion, but it actually smelled like roasted frogs. The saddest thing was that it suddenly felt that the roasted frogs smelled quite fragrant. Thinking of this, it subconsciously swallowed its saliva and immediately admitted defeat. Gigolo, oh no, sir, I surrender, Yi Chen then put away the divine fire and looked at it from head to toe. What exactly are you? You don't look like a toad. Your whole family are toads. The toad exploded and glared at him. My name is Heavenly Fire Divine Toad. I'm destined to illuminate the heavens in the future and break through the entire world. At this point, it seemed to be a little indignant. If I wasn't born in that strange place, how could I have been cursed? How could I have been bullied by you? You were born in the Forbidden Zone? Yi Chen's eyes lit up. The toad coughed continuously as if it realized that it had said something wrong. It could not help but shake its beady eyes and lie. Did Grandpa say that? You must have heard wrongly. Yi Chen laughed secretly. He knew that it was unwilling to tell him. So he changed the topic immediately. Why are you in the crater? Could it be that you're the guardian spirit beast of the ruins? Usually, before an expert died, they would be worried that someone would covet their tomb. So, they would set up some measures in advance. Traps in magic formations were a must, but they would also use spirit beasts to guard their tomb. Your whole family are caretakers of spirit beasts. The toad exploded once again. Its spittle flew everywhere as it said, that blockhead thinks he's worthy of Grandpa. Guarding his tomb? Grandpa is just going to swim in its lava. Is that all? Yi Chen smiled wryly. The toad couldn't help but feel diffident when it met his gaze. Of course, Grandpa also borrowed a few things from him. Whose tomb is that? Yi Chen asked again. The toad curled its lips and said unconcernedly, a martial god tomb. That blockhead was a martial god when he was alive. He has a hobby of collecting things from women's undergarments to the underpants of peerless experts. Yi Chen was speechless. Under everyone's gaze, Yi Chen returned from the crater of the volcano. What was different from before was that there was a toad on his shoulder. The toad was no longer as ferocious as before. All the lumps on its body were retracted. It was only the size of a palm, and it looked like a golden frog. The Patriarch of Hell immediately squeaked and went forward. Damn toad, you've finally fallen into my hands, haven't you? I'm going to roast you. The toad slanted its beady eyes and glanced at him in disdain. Don't you want the sores on your head and the pustules on the soles of your feet to go away? Bullsh asterisk T. How can there be pustules on the soles of my feet? The Patriarch of Hell immediately revealed an awkward expression. And your hemorrhoids? The toad sneered as it squinted its eyes. As soon as he said that, Yang Hao laughed on the spot, and the others all looked as if they wanted to laugh but didn't dare to. I'm going to kill you. The corner of the Patriarch of Hell's lips twitched a few times. Then, he pounced at the former with a ferocious glint in his eyes. All right. Yi Chen stopped him and said to the toad, remove the sores on his head and the pustules on the soles of his feet. Oh, and the hemorrhoids on his butt. I don't have hemorrhoids. The Patriarch of Hell protested. The toad rolled its eyes and said, I have a condition. After entering the ruins later, I want to fire lotus deep in the magma. Yi Chen glanced at it coldly and immediately figured out its real purpose. This guy was going to take a bath, but in reality, it was probably going for the fire lotus. Meeting his gaze, the toad immediately smiled bitterly and vomited at the patriarch. Are you going to vomit another supreme spiritual treasure? The patriarch of hell could not help but be secretly delighted when he saw this. He was prepared to receive the fourth supreme spiritual treasure. The others held their breaths and were ready to snatch the supreme spiritual treasure at any time. Earlier, they only hated themselves for not reacting in time. How could they miss the opportunity before them now? However, in the next moment, the patriarch felt a chill on his face. He could not help but reach out to touch it. He was stunned at first, and then he exploded. "Goddamn toad, how dare you spit at me? I was helping you get rid of your hemorrhoids." The toad was disdainful. Hearing that, the patriarch of hell could not help but reach out and touch his forehead. He realized that the huge sores from before had disappeared. He took off his boots and looked at his feet. He realized that the extremely itchy pustules were gone. At this moment, Yanghao suddenly came over and said faintly, "Patriarch, do you want me to help you see if the hemorrhoids on your burst's still there? You bastard, get lost." The old ancestor almost couldn't help but slap him to death. Yichen glanced at the surging crater and said to everyone, "Everyone, get ready. Let's go in and take a look." "Big brother, we took a look earlier. This ruin has just appeared," Yu Wushuang said. Yu Wushuang said, "It seems to be because of the volcanic eruption. The terrifying energy destroyed the decaying formation, exposing the ruin." "This pretty boy is right." The toad agreed. This ruin was indeed revealed because of the volcanic eruption. Otherwise, it might have been buried underground for who knows how many years. That's for the best. Yichen could not help but nod. If the ruin had really just appeared, it meant that no one had visited it yet apart from the toad. As the second batch of people, they should be able to gain something. Meanwhile, the real reason why Yi Chan was going in was to find something that could extend Su Yuhan's life. Just when Yi Chan was about to urge everyone to enter the ruin, a few figures with terrifying auras suddenly shot over from the sky. Song Chie's expression changed slightly. "Someone's here." Chapter 1478. Zap, zap, zap. The sound of something tearing through the air could be heard from the distant horizon. Following that was a terrifying pressure. At first, there were only a few figures, but in the end, dozens of divine rainbows shot over. "Someone's coming." Before Song Chie could finish speaking, everyone had already sensed this scene. They all looked at the sky with solemn expressions. After the dozens of divine rainbows, there was a long dragon of murderous aura that blotted out the sky. It was as if thousands of horses were galloping. Rumble, the entire sky seemed to be shaking violently. The fog churned, beasts roared, and clouds evaporated. The leader was wearing a golden battle robe. Divine light surged from his body, and a supreme pressure swept across everything. His eyes were like lightning as he looked down at the volcano crater below. His pupils constricted as he said, "The martial god's tomb?" Whoosh! At that moment, the dozens of rainbows and the dragon of murderous aura behind him paused at the same time. Then they stopped in the air. The silent pressure was suffocating. Yichen's eyes flashed unnoticeably from below. Then, his focus landed on the dragon of murderous aura that blotted out the sky. Mutated beasts, an army of mutated beasts. Every mutated beast was more than 150 meters tall. Their bodies were covered in barbs, and their bodies were ferocious. They roared with a strong, murderous aura. On the backs of the mutated beasts sat a man wearing golden battle intent. The leader even held a golden war flag in his hand. He looked down on everything in the wind. 12 perfected god transformation stage cultivators. Someone behind Yichen could not help but inhale sharply. He seemed to be shocked by the other party's lineup. Who are they? Luo Tianyao was worried. They were the first to discover the martial god's tomb. He did not expect it to be discovered so quickly. They're from the great Jiang god dynasty. At that moment, the toad on Yichen's shoulder suddenly said, "The great Jiang god dynasty is from the outer world. It said that there are almighties in the great Jiang God dynasty's mother planet who illuminates the heavens and enjoys the worship of all worlds. It seems like the one leading the team this time is the divine general of the great Jiang God dynasty, Jiang Yi. It said that he's the adopted son of the Jiang family. He's cruel and extremely loyal to the Jiang family. Everyone was shocked at first, then they could not help but look at it. Clearly, they were curious as to how it knew so many secrets. The great Jiang God dynasty? Hearing this, Yi Chen's eyes could not help but flicker. Then his gaze shifted and finally landed on the golden-armored man, called Jiang Yi. A man walked through the air and arrived beside Jiang Yi. Sir Divine General, the martial god tomb has appeared here. In order to prevent the news from leaking, do we need to clean up the area within 1,000 miles radius? At the end of his sentence, the person looked down at Yi Chen. His eyes were filled with cold, killing intent. Hearing that, the people behind Yi Chen revealed cold expressions. Their eyes were filled with vigilance when they looked at the people of the great Jiang God dynasty again. Yi Wuxuan looked at Yi Chen. Brother, should we attack? Yi God dynasty's attack. At the same time, Divine General Jiang Yi, who was in the air, only glanced at Yi Chen and the rest coldly. Then, he looked in a certain direction thoughtfully. It's too late. As soon as he finished speaking, a cold voice suddenly exploded in the sky. Your great Jiang divine dynasty is really fast. Rumble. As soon as he said that, it was as if thousands of thunderbolts exploded at the same time. Then, 18 giants suddenly descended. Each giant was like an ancient god, suppressing heaven and earth. The Panwu immortal sect. When the people of the great Jiang God dynasty saw the 18 giants, their pupils constricted, and they could not help but erupt with endless killing intent. 18 giants that were comparable to perfected god transformation stage. At this moment, even Patriarch Yellow Spring's expression froze. The toad on Yi Chen's shoulder chuckled. The dogs of the Panwu immortal sect are here too. This is going to be fun. I wonder if their Patriarch of Panwu is still alive. You know people from the Panwu immortal sect? Yang Hao could not help but ask. Not only do we know each other, but we're also enemies. The toad chuckled. That old bastard, the Patriarch of Panwu, wanted to subdue Grandpa. However, after Grandpa's second brother found out, he was beaten up by him. It glanced at Yi Chen intentionally after saying that. Everyone revealed doubtful expressions when they heard that. Yang Hao continued. What's the strength of that Patriarch of Panwu? He's very weak. He's only at the intermediate stage of void refinement. The toad said lazily. It then glanced at Yi Chen. Everyone gulped at the same time. Gulp? Very weak. Only at the intermediate stage of void refinement. Yes, he was really weak. He was so weak that he could kill them with a single breath and destroy their souls. Yang Hao was shocked at first, but then he chuckled and said with a face full of disdain, Toad, you're really a yawning toad. What do you mean by yawning toad? The toad was stunned. Yang Hao said, will you die if you don't brag? Rumble. At this moment, the sky surged once more, and then countless figures descended one after another. Among these figures, there were both humans and various great demons. Apart from that, there were also all kinds of strange races. However, 8 figures caught Yi Chen's attention. The 8 of them were dressed in Taoist robes and looked to be in their 50s or 60s. However, the color of their clothes was different. Brother Yi, they're from the Yin Huang Fortress. Luo Tianyao walked to Yi Chen's side and took a good look at the 6 of them. He said quietly, I'm afraid they're from the Xianyuan 8 clans. Just as he finished speaking, an old man in a black Taoist robe among the 8 figures seemed to have sensed his gaze and immediately looked over indifferently. With just a glance, Luo Tianyao felt as if he was being targeted by a peerless, ferocious creature. He felt a chill run down his spine. Fortunately, the other party did not seem to recognize them. He only took a glance before retracting his gaze. In the void, as the old man in a black Taoist robe retracted his gaze, an old man in a green Taoist robe beside him immediately asked, Brother Gu Quan, what's wrong? The other 6 could not help but look over. The old man in a black Taoist robe, called Gu Quan, shook his head and said in a deep voice, "It's nothing. Everyone, we must obtain the martial god's tomb this time. If necessary, we can get old ghost Lei Yun to cross over." As soon as he said that, the other 7 people's expressions turned grave. If a void refinement old monster were to be mobilized, the battle would definitely escalate to an uncontrollable situation. At that moment, the entire sky above the volcano was filled with countless people. Each faction occupied a seat, and then they sized each other up with hostility. This was because everyone knew that the appearance of the martial god's tomb would definitely lead to an intense battle and competition. End of this chapter. Chapter 1479. Ha! Under everyone's gaze, a figure walked out from the Panwu immortal sect's camp. I didn't expect someone from the Yanhuang fortress to come as well. Everyone immediately looked over and saw that the person was dressed in a green robe. He looked middle-aged, but his long hair was alternating between black and white. Clearly, his age did not match his appearance. Panwu immortal sect leader, Su Yangzi, the toad on Yi Chen's shoulder, said. As if in response to Su Yangzi's words, an old man from the Xinyuan 8 clan stepped forward. "Su Yangzi, if your Panwu immortal sect can come, why can't my Yanhuang fortress?" The old man wore a Taiji Taoist robe and held a horsetail whisk in his hand. His entire body exuded an otherworldly aura, and his eyes were bright, as if they could see through people's hearts. "Who is this person?" Yi Chen asked the toad. The toad curled its lips slightly. "Who knows? Among the Xinyuan 8 clans, Grandpa only knows those old things who are about to die. As for this person, I think he's from the Ji family." Su Yangzi chuckled and said teasingly, "So it's fellow Ji Hong. I heard that your Ji family's patriarch is about to die. Instead of staying by his side, you came here. If anything happens, the Ji family's old ghost won't be able to save you." "Su Yangzi, there's no need for the patriarch to deal with you." Ji Hong snorted coldly, his face trembling. The surrounding people watched coldly from the sidelines. Both sides were at daggers drawn, as if they were used to this scene. Only a few people's eyes flickered, clearly thinking about the meaning behind Su Yangzi's words. "Everyone's here." At that moment, Jiang Yi from the great Jiang dynasty slowly spoke, his voice shaking the surroundings. "Since that's the case, let's fight for the martial god's body with our own abilities." Boom! He took a step toward the crater below, and the space collapsed. "People of the great Jiang dynasty, follow me. Those who are unconvinced, feel free to fight." Kill! In an instant, the army of mutated beasts behind him swept through everything like a flood, rumbling as they followed Jiang Yi and ran towards the crater. The Panwu immortal sect will be the first to be unconvinced. "Those who block me today will die." Su Yangzi was so angry that he laughed. He waved his hand, and the 18 giant figures behind him immediately stepped onto the ground, following closely with terrifying killing intent. "Let's go too." Ji Hong glanced at the 7 people beside him. He deeply inhaled a breath of air and similarly flew towards the mouth of the volcano. Rumble. At that moment, the whole world was stirred up again. The other forces moved one after another. Even though the great Jiang divine dynasty and the Panwu immortal sect were strong, no one present was willing to back out, because the martial god's tomb was just too tempting. However, a great battle didn't erupt immediately because everyone's objective was still to search for treasures in the end. No one was willing to become the target of public criticism before they entered the martial god's tomb and completely witnessed the treasures within. Seeing that Yi Chen seemed to be in no hurry, the toad on Yi Chen's shoulder urged immediately, "Brat, keep up. If you don't go in now, there'll be nothing left." Yi Chen, on the other hand, looked around thoughtfully. To his disappointment, he did not see anyone from Taichu Dojo. Otherwise, he wouldn't mind cleaning it up in advance. "Go!" Yi Chen took one last look at the empty crater of the volcano. In the end, he took a step out and charged in with everyone. As the initial guide, the red skeleton did not fall behind. Instead, it chose to follow the crowd as if there was something inside attracting it. As soon as they stepped into the mouth of the volcano, the first thing that hit them was an extremely scorching feeling. However, this kind of scorching heat was still acceptable to everyone. After all, they only needed to expend their quintessential essence to condense a layer of protective barrier around their bodies. The second thing that came into view was a boundless river of magma. It looked like a boiling soup that was spewing boiling hot magma out of it. One could vaguely see many corpses. At the end of the magma, there was an extremely ancient and decaying palace floating on it. The palace remained motionless in the face of the boiling magma. Yi Chen activated the golden pupil flame. He could vaguely see that there seemed to be an extremely dangerous and scorching flame in the depths of the magma. He could not help but ask the toad, "Is the thing you want down there? That's mine. None of you are allowed to snatch it." The toad spat out golden divine flames as if it was determined to obtain it. "In return, I can tell you some treasures that they can't find. Is that so?" Yi Chen smiled lightly. "We'll talk about it when the time comes." Everyone immediately rushed toward the distant palace. As soon as they stepped into the palace, they saw that a thick and ancient stone door had long been shattered into pieces and scattered on the ground. There was still terrifying true origin energy lingering on it. Clearly, it was done by the people of the great Jiang God dynasty. Apart from that, there were many bloodstains on the ground. It looked very shocking. The Patriarch of Hell frowned. They were killed instantly. It seems like they didn't fight each other to death. Instead, they triggered some mechanism. Everyone could not help but feel nervous when they heard that. "Look at the two of you." The Patriarch of Hell said disdainfully, "Even if there are any formations or restrictions, they would have lost their effectiveness long ago if they were the vanguard for us. It's not that simple." Yi Chen lowered his head and picked up a trace of blood under his feet. He said, "This person was probably a stage soul formation cultivator when he was alive, but he was killed instantly. From this, it can be seen that the danger here is more serious than we imagined. The martial god's tomb is naturally extremely dangerous." The toad said in disdain, "Otherwise, why do you think so many people would risk their lives to enter the martial god's tomb? Follow behind me." Yi Chen shook his head and stepped into the palace immediately. What he saw were 9 tunnels made of stone rooms. Each tunnel was so deep that he could not see the bottom. Even though Yi Chen's divine consciousness could cover a wide range, he could not see to the bottom. "Which tunnel should we take?" Yang Hao asked. "The 5th tunnel." Before Yi Chen could speak, the toad on his shoulder suddenly said, "Brat, trust me. You guys will definitely benefit if you take the 5th tunnel." Yi Chen pondered for a while and then dashed into the 5th tunnel. Along the way, everyone saw many corpses lying on the ground. Clearly, someone had entered before them and fought. The tunnel was very long. Every 500 meters, there would be a separate stone room. It seemed to be the place where the owner of the tomb used to cultivate when he was alive. Unfortunately, the things inside had long been plundered. When everyone stepped into the last stone room, the first thing that greeted them was endless cold air. On the floor that was paved with cold jade, there were red medicinal pills piled up like a small mountain. The medicinal pills were refreshing. Due to the protection of the cold jade, they still retained their medicinal properties even after such a long time had passed. When Yi Chen's gaze landed on the medicinal pills, he could not help but be stunned even though he was calm. "Are these dragon blood pills?" End of this chapter. Chapter 1480. In the spacious stone room, the floor that was paved with 1,000-year-old cold jade was currently filled with piles of round pills. The pills were like blood-stained baby fists. They were crystal clear, like jade, and extremely plump. Within them, there was an extremely shocking body-refining power faintly seeping out. Even Yi Chen and the Patriarch of Hell were stunned by the scene before them. "There are so many dragon blood pills here." The dragon blood pill was rumored to be refined from dragon blood. It was a body-refining pill. Every single pill could greatly temper the potential of a cultivator's body. It was extremely precious to martial artists, and it was no exception to cultivators. After all, a cultivator's weakness was their physical body. If they had the dragon blood pill, their physical body would be greatly enhanced. In the future, they would have enough capital to fight others. The dragon blood pill was usually difficult to find. However, it was piled up like a mountain here, and it was casually scattered on the ground by the owner of the cave. It had to be said that the owner of this tomb was truly generous. At that moment, Luo Tinya, the North Sea Hall master, and the rest were stunned. Their eyes were filled with greed as they looked at the medicinal pills before them. If they were not afraid of Yichun, there might really be people who could not help but take action. Only the toad said indifferently, "Isn't it just a pile of lousy medicinal pills?" Yichun saw everyone's gaze and said after pondering for a moment, "Everyone, I'll keep these medicinal pills for now. I'll distribute them to everyone after we leave this place." In reality, the pile of dragon blood pills before him was not very attractive to him. After all, his body had long exceeded the scope of everyone's understanding. It was useless even if he had it. "Heavenly Lord Yi, that makes sense." Everyone nodded. Clearly, they were not worried that Yi Chun would take it for himself. "All right then, I'll take them first." Yi Chun nodded and extended his hand. He then enveloped the many dragon blood pills with his divine consciousness and collected them quickly. Even with his majestic divine consciousness, he could not collect all the dragon blood pills before him in an instant. Tap, tap, tap. At that moment, the sound of rustling footsteps came from outside. Everyone's expression immediately became tense. In an instant, several figures appeared at the entrance of the stone room. However, their gazes were all focused on the mountainous pile of dragon blood pills, and their eyes were filled with greed. "Kid, hand over the pills you've taken and come out obediently. We might spare your life if you do that." The sinister old man in the lead looked at Yi Chun greedily. At the same time, the people behind him blocked the entrance of the stone chamber. Clearly, they did not plan to let Yi Chun and the rest leave. There were a total of 7 people. 3 of them were in the late soul transformation stage, while the rest were in the mid-soul transformation stage. In their opinion, although Yi Chun's camp had many people, there were less than 2 people who could threaten them. With so many dragon blood pills, it was enough for the 7 of them to use. There were still leftovers for their juniors, and they could even exchange them for spirit stones and magical treasures. "You're robbing me?" Yi Chun smiled lightly. Subsequently, he squinted and said, "Kill them all. Their things are yours." As soon as he finished speaking, countless auras exploded in the stone room, drowning the 7 of them in an instant. Soon, 7 broken corpses appeared on the ground. The sinister old man in the lead widened his eyes as if he had died with a grievance. He did not expect to encounter a tough guy like Yi Chun. At that moment, Yi Chun put away the last dragon blood pill. At that moment, people arrived one after another. However, when they saw the 7 corpses lying on the ground, their expressions could not help but freeze. They looked at Yi Chun with fear again. "That's the old man Tong Shan." The old man Tong Shan is a late-stage soul transformation stage patriarch after all, but he died here. It can only be said that wealth moves people's hearts. Who are they? Why have we never seen them before? The people who rushed over looked at Yi Chun and the rest and sent voice transmissions through divine consciousness. Although some of them could guess what benefits Yi Chun had obtained in the stone room, they did not dare to attack. After all, the fate of the 7 of them was right before their eyes. "Let's go." Yi Chun glanced at everyone coldly and swaggered out of the stone room with the others. No one dared to stop him. He had always done things like this. It was best if everyone was safe, but if someone dared not open their eyes, then they could not blame him for killing them. "Toad, you really got it right." Yang Hao was extremely excited because of the dragon blood pill 2 earlier. He looked at the toad again and said, "Tell me, where are we going next?" "Head southeast. There's a treasure there." The toad rolled its eyes at the former's flattery. However, it still pointed out a path for everyone. After about the time it took for an incense stick to burn, a thick stone door appeared in front of everyone. The stone door was already covered in green moss. The green color gave people a sense of age. Yang Hao tried to push it, but he felt that the stone door was extremely heavy. Then, he turned around dejectedly and said, "The treasure is behind the stone door?" "That's right. If I'm not mistaken, behind the stone door is the herb garden cultivated by the owner of this tomb." The toad spat out divine fire. "Her garden?" Yi Chun's heart skipped a beat when he heard that. He then took a step forward and scanned it with his divine consciousness. After confirming that there were no traps on it, he pushed hard. Rumble. The heavy stone door that was hundreds of meters tall and heavy was pushed by Yi Chun in an instant. The moment the stone door was pushed open, an extremely blinding light made everyone close their eyes by instinct. After adapting to the strong light, what entered everyone's eyes was not a herb garden, but a forest that seemed like an ancient forest. What followed was an extremely strong medicinal fragrance. Yang Hao suddenly looked at the toad and swallowed a mouthful of saliva in shock. This is the herb garden you were talking about? Isn't it a herb garden? The toad said in all seriousness. The expressions of the rest of the people were also extremely dull. How could their herb garden be so big? That was pure nonsense. How the F***CK was this a herb garden? It was clearly a sea of herbs. It could only be said that the owner of the martial god tomb was too rich. Rumble. Yichin closed the stone door with a backhand and said, "Let's go." The vast forest was shrouded in a faint layer of fog. A pungent fragrance drifted between heaven and earth. Occasionally, little beasts would flee in panic after being frightened by the crowd. It gave off a feeling of paradise on earth. At the same time, everyone spread their divine consciousness out one after another. Even Yi Chun was no exception. To his surprise, he could not cover the entire ancient forest with his powerful divine consciousness. The Patriarch of Hell reminded, "There are ferocious beasts inside. Everyone, be careful." End of this chapter.